May 18th started. If you'd like to speak on an item on the agenda or not on the agenda, you can bring it up to this beautiful young lady on my left, and she can get your slip. If you have a cell phone, if you could put it in the silent mode, that would be very helpful during the evening. Chris is trying to figure it out. Okay, with that, Chris, when you late, so you get to do.
And do my honor.
You.
Please all stand, face our flag, place your right hand over your heart, and follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's, we want to get a roll call?
Yes, we can do that. Commissioner Wolf, Commissioner Rettstead. Here. Commissioner Hitz,
Here.
Commissioner Brzee,
Present.
Commissioner Beck,
Here.
Vice Chair Markarian,
Here.
and Chair Algauer.
Here. Okay, with that, let's move to the minutes of April 20th.
Point of order, the public comment for items not on the agenda, we have no speaker slips for that.
Okay. Can we get approval on the minutes and,
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
that would include, the consent agenda as well?
Yes, the consent agenda consists of the April 20th, 2022 minutes.
Oh, there is on the consent
Okay,
agenda.
all right.
April 20th.
Good. Okay, all those in favor?
Need a second, I'll second.
Oh, you second? Nobody got a second?
No,
Okay. Well, where were you?
flag.
Okay, we have a motion to second, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none? Consent agenda done, that's it. Okay, I guess we go to our first project. Is, case number 22058, architectural review. Is that two of them we're looking at then, Ben?
Yes, Maddie will do the presentation, but it's two separate projects, but it's the same plans for both. And so we combine them for ease of readership. So.
Okay.
Yes.
Madeline, you doing this one?
Thank you, Honorable Chairman Algauer. So this is case number 22058 and 22059, an architectural review that the applicant Levy Affiliated Holdings has submitted for their previously approved entitlements. So some background on the project is that on March 2nd, 2022, the Planning Commission approved case number 21086 and case number 21-094, which were conditional use permits and density bonus agreements. Case number 21086 was for a 52-unit age-restricted senior housing project on 3rd Street, and case number 21-094 was for a 32-unit age-restricted senior housing project on 4th Street. So during the process, the applicant expressed that they were updating the floor plans and had interest in reconfiguring the modular unit makeup to include one bottom floor unit and one second-story unit above it, rather than a traditional duplex style where there's a shared wall connected between two units within that same modular footprint. These new units presented before you today in this architectural review package have been designed to help increase accessibility for senior residents, as there is a bottom floor unit and bedrooms aren't solely located on the second floor. Per conditions of approval number 59 and 57 respectively, in the conditions of approval for each of those existing entitlements, the applicant is required to have an architectural review package approved prior to issuance of building permits, and that's why we're presenting before you this architectural review. As discussed, the sites are located on 3rd Street and 4th Street. So on the left, there's a photograph of 12845 3rd Street, which is the larger of the two projects with 52 units, and surrounding zoning is multiple residential. And then on the right-hand side is the site location for the project on 4th Street, which is a 2.46 acre parcel and will provide 32 senior housing units, and again is surrounded by RM72C zoning with a senior housing, or with a mobile home park directly to the south. So the floor plans will be the same across the board for all of the 84 total units associated with these two projects. Each modular building will consist of 1,866 square feet in a 2-story duplex format, again with the one unit on the ground floor and the other located above it as a 2nd-story unit. 933 square feet of habitable living space will be provided in each unit, which will include 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. The 2nd floor unit will be accessed by a recessed stairwell along the front elevation of each of the modular structures. And then as per the city's multifamily guidelines, each of the units will be required to provide at least 3 amenities, and the applicant has indicated that they will provide air conditioning, oversized closets, and decorative doors. Before you is the first elevation. All of them have somewhat of a modern influence and use materials such as standing seam metal roofing, horizontal lap siding, and board and batten vertical siding as the primary building material for the structure. And then stainless steel railings are proposed within porch and patio areas of each of the different elevation styles, again adding to that modern influence. In particular, this elevation 1 on the screen has a shed roof, and then there are accent slates along the front elevation for some added dimension, as well as privacy screening 2. Now this is elevation 2. Again, a modern feel with a notable slanted roof. Additionally, there's a reverse color scheme provided for this elevation style, which increases the variation across the development. And then elevation 3 is before you on the screen, and it has a slightly more craftsman influence. There's a more gabled roof and some pop-outs, but again, keeping with that modern approach, and there are clean lines, large windows, and sliding glass doors tied in throughout. With each of these projects, there's an LUCR for entry monument signs to advertise the developments. Case number 21-086, which is the 52-unit development, will provide a 23 square foot entry monument sign advertising the name Tilden Court. And then case number 21-094, which is the 32-unit complex, has a 27 square foot proposed monument sign that will advertise Elizabeth Court. Conceptual landscaping is also provided as a part of this package, but will ultimately be reviewed as a form of condition of approval from the city's landscape architect. So there will be block walls along the frontage of the properties, and this is for the 52-unit project on 3rd Street. And then before you on the screen now is for the 32-unit project on 4th Street. I do want to point out that this plan shows that there's an existing fence to remain along the northern property line, but that existing fence is chain link and not consistent with the multifamily standards, so that is something that will be verified through the formal building plan check process to ensure consistency with the municipal code. And that's it for the presentation. If you have any questions, the applicant is present and available, and I can also answer.
Okay, anyone have any questions for staff at this time? Okay, would the applicant like to come forward? Oh, boy. Yeah, where's the kid, where's the young kid?
I was going to say, Chairman Algauer, I'm sure you'd rather have Travis up here, but he asked for the day off. What could I do? So he said he already worked his 6 hours. So first of all, I want to thank Maddie for keeping us in line. You know, the two projects are, between the two of them, they have the same floor plans, and we had 2 elevations, and she said, you know, I'm not going to be too happy if we get up there and you only have 2 elevations, and so we put a third one together just about a week ago, and, you know, even though we had different color schemes and so forth, so we did add a lot more variety and so forth, so I appreciate that. At least you kept us in line. Secondly, I want to say, and this is big for you, Commissioner Mark Herring, you mentioned that you would rather see the up and down rather than the side-by-side. And so that's what we've done, which actually lays out better because as you saw, the staircases are out front, and it allows us to have a better, larger bathrooms, a little more space, instead of a bathroom up and a bathroom down, the bathrooms are now kind of side by side on the same floor with so forth. So it really does lay out better. And they each have a front patio area that's about 127, 129 square feet. So there's room to sit out front. And then at the same time, there's also upstairs, there's a small patio area where they can step out in the back on the upper, or there's a fenced-in area on the bottom where they've got a little grass area. So it actually plays out better for the people that live there. So, and these are, by the way, these aren't, these are modular, but they're steel frame, metal frame. They're good quality. They're not storage units that are converted or any of that kind of stuff. It's a good product. So anyway, any questions? We spent a lot of time to make sure that we got it right and that it's a good looking. If you look, I don't know if you guys have been out there, but these are all compromised properties. These are all bad infill properties that have streams running next to them and erosion and need dirt or have too much dirt, or we got to move them around. So, but the triplet to this one, the one on Avenue E, which we first got approved and has actually been graded now, and is moving forward and is getting there as soon as we get the site ready. In fact, next week, water, sewer, storm drains start going in. But it's graded. It looks good. I think they're going to be great projects. And again, we're going to bring, knock another 116 units out of the bite of the apple that we need to take here for units. So, but if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Question.
Of course.
Do you know if this is the first of its kind of project, or do we have modular housing units like this already in Yucaipa?
That I know of, it's the first of its kind. Ben, is there anything similar?
No, we really haven't had anything that is kind of a factory built and then brought in here. It isn't the same construction as like a mobile home. It's not a Title 25 type structure, but it is kind of unique project for Yucaipa, and I haven't seen too many out, but it is certainly growing in popularity as material costs increases. How can builders provide a little bit more attainable housing opportunities?
It's funny because we have, obviously, as you know, we do a lot of stuff in Yucaipa. This is our backyard. This is where we like to do business. And there are other cities we're working in now, Moreno Valley and San Bernardino and so forth, that for this same client, we're bringing the product there. And those cities are excited to come out here and see the product as they move forward in their cities, So I think it's going to be for a lot of the cities, it's going to be the start of something that's going to maybe take off a little bit as these cities look for affordable type housing or affordable rents and things of that nature. So
that was going to be my follow-up question as to the history of Elizabeth Court, kind of elevation, and Tilden Court, as far as the history and durability of this kind of structure. Do you know any reference points, some housing that has taken place like this?
I don't. What I can tell you is these units are inspected by the state of California just as they would any other modular or mobile, for structural stability. We worked with Ben, Maddie, and Christian to work on the architecture to make sure, at first these were fairly plain, right? And we were able to get together and say, well, what makes sense? Do we put shutters here? Do we put a gable? What about the roofs? The roofs were pretty flat in the beginning, but if you looked at that exhibit right there, they were very varied and so forth. So, we've done a lot. And honestly, when they ship them in, doing the roof like that means they have to ship an extra piece in, because instead of a flat roof and doing two pieces, they've got that third piece they have to ship in now. So it's, it's a little more costly, but it's better looking and it makes more sense.
Okay,
Anything? Thank you.
commissioners. Okay, with that, do we have any public comments, Ben?
No public comments on this item as it's not a public hearing, but no comments received for it.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll close the public hearing and move to the commissioners. Commissioners, Lloyd, start with you. Bart?
I like that they took the consideration of the floor plan being a single story upstairs, single story downstairs, rather than 2 stories. Safety concern for any seniors that may live there, fall inside and not know. We wouldn't know if anyone had fallen inside their own home, so I'm very happy with this.
Tony?
I'm anxious to see how it looks. Like you said, building costs are just so outrageous right now.
Crazy.
Good luck with your project.
To answer your question, Chris, I've seen a lot of these built down in LA.
Yeah.
That's where they're, yeah, and they're really nice. So, yeah, it's a good project.
All right.
Well, we seem to have a consensus.
I'd like to make a
Get a
motion.
motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve cases number 22-058 and 22059 of the architectural review packages with the recommendations of the staff of the 84 units.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, now, let's move into our next item, which is the Electronic Messaging Center. It's a general plan amendment to modify the current outdoor signage of the general plan.
So I believe this is the right time for me to excuse myself as my office building is considered in this amendment. It would affect my property and the neighboring property. I had spoken to Ben about it, and I think it's only appropriate for me to excuse myself. I hope there's internet so I can enjoy listening into the conversation from the other room. And don't forget about me when you guys finish this.
We will. Bring me water when you come back. Okay. With that,
All right, thank you, Honorable Chairman and Planning Commissioners. Before you is kind of a multi-stage kind of project, or a few different elements that go into what is being requested tonight. So the city has received 3 separate applications from 2 different companies to establish a electronic billboard, electronic messaging center in the city of Yucaipa. And as part of that, in order to help process whatever those applications, a general plan amendment is first required to modify policy CDL-4.6 to allow for up to 3 outdoor off-site advertising billboards, and then as well as the Development Code Amendment Ordinance Number 393 that would establish the regulatory permitting for such structures. And so right now, in the city's general plan, CDL-4.6 does not currently permit off-site commercial advertising structures. So new billboards are right now prohibited based on the policy as it's written. And then subsequent with that is the Development Code does not include provisions to permit new billboards, including any guidance for what would be the electronic messaging center structures. A little bit of kind of history that goes along with this. A application, case number 19-155, was originally submitted for an EMC structure at the corner of Hilltop Drive and Outer Highway 10. Essentially, it's the opposite corner as you get off the freeway from where the subway facility is. As part of that, a general plan amendment and development code was going to be necessary for approval of that project. And so ordinance number 393 was first kind of initially drafted up. A environmental review and mitigated negative declaration was prepared for that. And then ultimately, the project was withdrawn as the applicant for that and the underlying property owner were working through their deal points and ultimately did not arrive at a deal that they were both comfortable with each other to move that one along. And so that project kind of withdrawn, and then shortly thereafter, in 2021, 3 separate EMC applications were then submitted by 2 different applicants. And so as part of, as I mentioned, in order to kind of entertain the applications and the requests that are for you tonight, a modification to CDL 4-6 is needed to permit any new EMC application. And so as part of that, a draft of what that policy would be has been provided in the staff report and is on the screen above. But the key elements is tying in an aesthetic element to the freeway, so gateway type monumentation, requiring a little bit higher architecture detailing for any such EMC, and then establishing a cap at 3 new outdoor structures, which corresponds to 3 separate applications that we have before you tonight. And then included in the agenda packet is the draft resolution 2022-21, which would be what formally implements that general plan amendment. And essentially, really, the policy amendment is based off the applications that are received. Both this and the ordinance are tied in terms of what the applications are. However, they're not site-specific. It is still a much more broader framework of along the freeway corridor, near the entrances to the city would be where an EMC would be allowed, and these 3 particular sites fall within that realm. And so as I mentioned, ordinance number 393 was developed to establish and process the review of EMC, so requiring a conditional use permit process for any such billboard that is proposed. A flag test would also be required to confirm the visible height, so trying to make sure that the sign isn't necessarily taller than it needs to be. And then, as I mentioned, as part of kind of that gateway element, rather than just a plain sign structure that has the billboard component, is having some sort of decorative element around the sign. So it can look a little bit more attractive, tie in other features other than just the billboard structure itself that's conventionally known. And then kind of the last part is standards established on light output and screen rotation. So really making sure that whatever signs, there's technology built into the LED technology that can reduce the brightness and having additional redundancy. So if it's a dark night, the light output doesn't need to be as high because the contrast with the night, if you have too much light being produced, then you can't read what's on the screen. And then also in terms of the visibility and legibility of the sign is to make sure that the screen does remain static for 8 or more seconds, so no moving pictures. As I have on the screen, a picture of Moving Pictures album cover from Rush, so that's not allowed on the sign. And then finally, as part of the overall effort, so this legislative element as well as the project-specific entitlements, these projects are subject to the environmental review process. As I noted, an initial study was originally processed and prepared for the case number 19-155. This essentially assessed the potential for 2 EMCs, so it's the 1 application plus an additional one that may be permitted along the freeway corridor. And then that was available for public comment for 30 days in April of 2020 through May of 2020. However, as I mentioned, that project was withdrawn, and so no formal action on that initial study occurred. However, it had been circulated. And then since the 3 new applications came in, a recirculated M&D was prepared. So as we've increased the scope a little bit with the 3rd proposal that's in place, we did recirculate that M&D to solicit feedback and to reconcile some of the impact discussions on 2 signs versus 3 and making sure that the record was consistent with that. And so that was provided for a 30-day review period on March 28th of 2022 and ending on April 27th. Additionally, as part of the CEQA review process, a response to comments was prepared for the comments that were received. So it does address 1 comment from the City of Redlands for 19-155, as well as 2 additional comments that were received for the recirculated M&D. I do want to note that as part of the environmental review, no significant unavoidable impacts were found, and similar clearances have been done for other cities. So as part of this, it is a billboard structure. It does have the design elements that have been implemented and mitigation requirements, as I noted in the development code, to help address some of the issues that used to be much more present, especially with older electronic signs. Now, as I noted, we did receive a few different comments on specific projects and on the GPA as a whole. And so I'll kind of talk about the GPA elements first, and then as we get into the individual projects, about any comments are received specific to that specific entitlement. However, we did receive some concerns about maintaining Yucaipa's rural identity, including some concerns about maybe some of the more natural areas having signs there. Do want to note, as part of the development code, ordinance, it really is focusing the allowable areas for such structures to be close to freeway off-ramps, so there's gonna be surrounding commercial development there. It isn't necessarily, you know, in the middle of the pumpkin patch way down there where there isn't that type of commercial development. It's areas that are already urbanized and related to that. Some written concerns about light impacts and safety. As I mentioned, we have included design elements both in the ordinance as well as in the mitigation measures that are intended to address those concerns. One of the comment letters that was passed out recently that was submitted after the Plan Commission packet was sent out had some stuff about concerns with safety, but if you read through the technical analysis that they have, it talks about light being too bright, making sure that dimmers are in place, and other features that can help mitigate and minimize some of the visibility issues with poorly designed sign structures. And so our development code amendment does address and incorporate those requirements. And then I did receive one verbal comment about the 3-sign limit. They were hoping that perhaps more would be permitted so that they could consider one for their individual property. Now, in terms of the overall actions, as I mentioned, the general plan right now and the development code does not permit provisions to approve these projects. And so the legislative amendment action needs to happen first. Then if approved, the action can be then taken on the 3 separate EMC structures. Plan Commission recommendation is needed for all the items for the council review, and the Plan Commission or council may modify the legislative actions or proposals as you guys deem necessary. So if there's certain design elements for a particular project that you want to see, that can certainly be incorporated as well. As Vice Chair Markarian noted, he does have property within the bounds of the general plan and the ordinance, as well as one of the applications which I'll get into as the next slide. However, the other 2 sites, assuming if the project is approved, then he would be able to weigh in on those other 2 applications since that conflict, once the legislative element is there, then it is within that context. And so I do want to quickly kind of cover, as I mentioned, 3 separate CUPs from 2 different applicants were submitted along the freeway corridor. All the projects have been designed in conformance with ordinance number 393, so they are within that scope that is prepared and for Plan Commission's recommendation tonight. And then all the projects also include a developer agreement that has very consistent deal points. So what we are requesting from those applicants, should the project move forward, is consistent. One is that a static billboard be removed so there's no net increase in billboards in the city. One, that there is also a revenue share provision from the ad space that's generated, providing opportunity for advertising of city-sponsored events, as well as a discount rate for local businesses. So these are deal points that are provided as kind of reference for our Plan Commission. The deal points themselves are under the purview of the city council. The land use elements is what is under a Plan Commission, but it is helpful to know that all the applications are being treated the same in terms of what the expectations would be for that development. And so the first application I'm going to cover real quickly is the one that Christopher Markarian was within proximity to, is case number 21-154. It's a conditional use permit and development agreement, ordinance number 410, to permit an EMC that replace an existing static billboard on a commercial property at 31547 Outer Highway 10. And so this property is within the CS land use district and does feature an existing self-storage facility. There is an existing billboard structure that's proposed to be removed, and then the structure design is 50 feet at the top of display, and then they do feature a City of Yucaipa logo and mountain motif, the San Bernardino mountain motif that's common on the city's logo as part of the decorative top for that. And the structure includes these different decorative elements as a way to conform to the architecture enhancements that's listed in the development code. I do want to note, as part of this, there were some project notice comments received about concerns, again, of the rural appearance, as well as concerns about light-related impacts to the residences south of the site. And so I guess with that, because of these items kind of in the element that is within the purview of where Vice Chair Markarian cannot participate, I will leave it to you guys to to discuss, we can stop here, segment out these discussion points, and then move on to the balance based on that. I do also want to note, as part of the review process, as a formality, is we'll open up the public hearing for this period. So if anyone wants to talk about the general plan amendment, the ordinance, or this particular site, they can. And then when we cover the balance of the projects, they can weigh in on that application once we get to that stage as well. So that concludes my presentation, at least for this segment of that, and happy to answer any questions. And then applicants for both projects, so the applicants for the GPA are also here, can answer questions either on the project as a much more high level, and then get into individual projects separately.
So both projects will be looked at the same time then?
The action that will need to happen first is consideration of the recommendation, whether or not you guys want to move forward the general plan amendment in the ordinance, and then you can also take action on the 21-154 first, and then once that is done, whatever results from that, then Vice Chair Markarian can come back and vote on the balance of that.
On the other two, but not the ordinance.
That is correct. Yeah, so once the motion is made on the ordinance, either as it is now with modification or denial, Vice Chair Markarian does not get to weigh in on that. So that decision will be cleared so that way it will be presented to City Council following that.
So did we do a negative CEQA declaration on this?
Yes, there was a negative declaration prepared for this project. There is light-related mitigation measures, and these do align with the development code provisions as well. So making sure that some of the light concerns that may have been, I think of the Pomona Fairplex kind of electronic structure that certainly has a lot of light issues. That as an older design doesn't quite work with what the technology has, and so those features that need to be in place are included in that mitigation.
Okay. So with that, do we want to move to the applicant? Or what do we,
Yeah,
okay.
or comments for staff, yeah.
Okay, let's just, okay, anybody have a comment for staff before we go to the?
I just have a question on the height. You said it was 50 foot overall?
The one before you is 50 feet to the top of the electronic sign
Feet.
element. What?
Oh, to the electronic sign.
Yeah, and then the architecture detail is about 5.5 feet, I think, above it.
And the billboard that's being replaced or would be removed?
That one's a little bit shorter. It's facing one direction. I think it's facing the westbound traffic.
So it's not adjacent to this property, then where's that billboard located?
It is on the property. It is,
It is.
yeah, so it's further west, yeah, right on the edge of the property line. So based on the dimensions that they need, they're gonna shift essentially where the billboard is on one side of that driveway or emergency exit onto the other side.
I'm sorry, I just didn't see exactly which one it was. So it's something less than 50 foot in height now?
Yes.
And it's facing the westbound, so the opposing lane of traffic?
It's either westbound or eastbound, trying to go off visual memory.
Yeah.
But it's facing one side because of the position where it's at with respect to the existing stretchers. It has visibility on one of those directions.
And would the height, would that become, are we trying to make that the standard? If we approve something like this, are we setting the standard?
No, so the ordinance itself includes provisions, as I mentioned, to do a flat test. It does establish kind of a maximum height requirement that you cannot exceed. But all these sites were, as part of it, included a flat test. So they had a bid banner that they would lift up by crane showing the different heights, kind of measure it, and then I, as staff, would drive and kind of see what the visibility is and try and make sure that, the lowest spot where it's appropriately visible from both sides of the direction would be the height that the sign is. And so most of the signs were there. There was one project where they were able to shave off, I think, about 10 feet of height doing that exercise. So we did try to do that due diligence ahead of time so that that way we don't have signs just sticking up for the sake of sticking up. And part of it, probably the applicant can go into, probably a deal point, if it's sitting way high out of your line of sight, then it does make it a little bit more, less useful as a sign structure, so.
This one has some blockage though from the overpass.
Yeah.
On the eastbound lane, so, right?
And then when on your report, you mentioned, permitting up to 3 outdoor sites. Is that what we're going after, 3, or is that open for discussion, or?
So the Plan Commission may weigh in on what that number should be. The 3 is based on the 3 applications we have. So for everyone that submitted a project, we didn't try to assume that one of them would be shut out, or at least for the environmental purposes, making sure that we covered. You know, if the Plan Commission did ultimately approve all 3 structures, that the CEQA document covered the environmental impacts associated with 3 individual projects. But the Plan Commission may reduce that number or modify it in a way that seems appropriate for that. And as I mentioned, it is a recommendation to City Council, so whatever you may recommend, the City Council can certainly weigh in and affirm that recommendation, or may have some other tweaks as well.
So, JR, so the amendment to the development code, that's limited to just the I-10 corridor, right?
That is correct.
And the second thing is, even with that amendment, if there would be any future considerations of this type of signage, it would have to go through the planning commission for a conditional use permit?
Yeah, so
But we would have a chance to review it?
yeah, so right now, because we have the 3 applications, they're all kind of running in tandem. Let's say hypothetically a sign proposal doesn't work out for whatever reason, then that would be, let's say 2 of the 3, someone else could later come through with the 3rd one. Or, if someone wanted to process their own separate general plan amendment later on to do a 4th one, then that would go through review. But at least the policy framework is set up for all the applications we receive, no more or no less at this point.
So even with there would still be a chance for somebody to come in and submit an application, but wouldn't you have to go through more than just a CUP at that point?
Yeah, they'd have to go through
Go
kind of
back
the,
through this process again? if you
yep,
want.
the full regulatory process, and that's consistent with, anyone can submit any type of project at any time, and whatever the lay of the land is at the time
That
will
doesn't
dictate what
conform to-
the procedure will be. So if let's say hypothetically council approves this, 5 years later, someone says, I want to do a 4th sign on private property, then they would have to go through the same process and procedure that these 2 applicants did already.
But the general plan would have already been modified by that point anyway, because we're gonna talk about that now, and then the council's gonna deal with it, right?
Yeah, but just for 3.
But if we put a limit of 3,
If we put a limit of 3.
then they've got to go through this whole
Whole thing
process
again.
again.
Yeah.
But if we opened it to
So-
4, or
Yeah.
I'll just say that I've had a little experience with billboards that I've managed in the past on private property. And I took a drive down the freeway and just looking, on the westbound lanes, on that side of the freeway, we have 8 2-sided billboards and 2 single-sided billboards. Sorensen Engineering has their larger LED screen on their sign. You've got the In-N-Out Burger sign, that whole center. It's a very large monument. Not a billboard, but nonetheless huge. And then there's 14 freeway business signs that are freestanding, not including signs that are mounted on buildings. Then on the eastbound lanes, you have 8 2-sided, 1 single-sided. You have the pawn shop that has again, an LED larger, and then again, another 14 freeway business signs that are freestanding. Again, it doesn't include what's on building sides or attached to buildings. If you drive and, we go down the road like this most of the time, right? But if you look at all the billboards around, the billboards, for the most part, are old. They're telephone poles with some metal structures, but we have, most of ours are older, they haven't been upgraded or anything, so you have these old billboards. And honestly, I hadn't really looked at it much until this all came up. But on the ends of it, they're folded around the sides with a vinyl sign. You know, they used to be paste when I was a kid. But you've got this thing pulled around and it's suspended on the backside. Most of them are flopping in the wind to some extent. They pick up, you know, birds and various things that live in behind them. And I just think at some point we need to be looking at, you know, these are monument signs that you're proposing here that I see. These are larger than a standard billboard, set much higher, designates City of Yucaipa, and have the city logo. And this is what billboard companies do to try to get in, right? This is what they're looking at as a project like this, to gain support, to be able to, because it shows off the city, and I'm all for that. But on the other side, I think the smaller billboards that are existing, I think we need to take some consideration about those being digital, not larger, but I think you cut down on energy use, you cut down on a lot of different things in that. You get upgraded structures that look nice, that are sealed off, and actually the light that escapes from those structures is a lot less than this lighting that they have now. And so just my comments on it, you know, that's the number of billboards we have. I don't think these are bad projects at all. I just think the overall perception that billboards are bad is wrong, because we're gonna allow signs and monument signs and all of these things for other businesses that come along. And I know you mentioned that the pumpkin patch wouldn't be allowable one. And everyone here knows that's one of my neighbors. But not just him, but the other businesses that are on that section. That's all pretty much gonna be industrial and commercial. You have no housing element that's in any of those areas, so you don't have any light offset. I look at the freeway corridor as something totally different than the rest of Yucaipa. Right. So I don't see that as an issue. It is what it is. We're gonna have signs, we're gonna have billboards, we're gonna have whatever. But I just hate to see it limited at 3 big monument ones and not look at the potential of getting the smaller ones upgraded to a new, more modern billboard.
Was that a bad thing?
No, I think that's a good.
Yeah, I think, you know, if we're gonna do this, put something in there that, you know, the old billboard ever has to be brought up to some kind of standard within a given period of time. You know, kind of get it cleaned up.
Either that or do what Glendale did and go in and buy out the contracts and get rid of them, if that's really a consideration, which I don't think it is, because the city's got a billboard paid for right now for their upcoming concert on Oak Glen Road. And most of those billboards are paid for by local businesses or businesses in the area or businesses in Redlands. So I think it's, I don't think it's something we're gonna get rid of as far as billboards, but if we can make it better and where there's less impact on the neighbors around it, I think that's a great thing. I
And
think
maybe
this is-
improve the appearances and get more of a standard out there.
And plus provide local businesses a way to have some, you know, lower cost ad space too.
So something that could be done, I guess, to that comment is certainly the general plan amendment and the ordinance is to address kind of the requests that have been received for these individual projects. I can certainly make note of it for the city council presentation that whether or not they want to pursue kind of a study session to address maybe modernizing some of the older structures and what that may look like. No effort has been made on that specific element and what that would look like, at least at this stage, because it isn't germane to these individual projects, but certainly worthwhile.
Well, this,
note I can provide.
you know, I don't really see the need for 3 of these big monument billboards. I just, to me, that's kind of overkill. I think it's the 2 that are the best location or the least impact on on the residents. But I also think that the billboard companies should have the option of upgrading their signs, and I don't know why we can't handle that here as an option as well. But that's me, so I'll be quiet.
I believe we could put that into this package that we're updating, the signage that, current signage has to be within a given time, up to some kind of standard. I'd like to see staff come back and give us some kind of, guidelines as to what that standard would be and how long it would have to be before they either take them down or bring them up to code, up to the new code.
Yeah, so we can certainly do that. I guess as part of the procedure elements, because these are private applications that were submitted, we're processing the general plan amendment and the ordinance based on that particular request. The other part may be more of a city-led initiative. And so certainly getting prior concurrence with city council on to proceed with that level of analysis and create the ordinance would be the first step, but certainly that point in topic can be presented to city council for their direction to make those changes.
Okay, anybody else at this time,
I have
staff?
I have a couple of questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm sorry to beat this, but the 3 limit is just for the freeway corridor, or that's citywide?
The general plan policy is a bit, I think, more just as part of so it does identify as a gateway feature, so it would be focused on the freeway corridor, and then the ordinance itself is specific to the Interstate 10 corridor.
So if somebody wanted to put one someplace else besides there, they'd have to go through this process too?
Yep.
All right. At the bottom of, it was, in fact, go to the back, similar projects in other cities. What might we have seen that looks like what these are going to look like?
In terms of what the sign structures,
Where else would we have seen these?
so perhaps the applicants may have some detail, but I
I
do
do, yeah.
know, for example, General Outdoor, I think they have some signs in the city of Ontario and maybe Fontana.
Beaumont have one?
They can probably answer whether or not, but I know that there's a few different sign companies.
Big one at Highland Springs.
I can name quite a few in a minute.
Yeah, there's General Outdoor, which is one of the applicants. Leonard and Company is another. Lamar owns a lot of billboard structures as well. So there's a few different companies, and they use, they're not the sign manufacturer, so they do contract out and can provide that. But I do know General Outdoor, for example, does have some in Ontario. They do have one in Eastvale, and I think a few other spots that are relatively close by that you may have.
The 2 local ones that I'm aware of is Beaumont out off of 8th Street was one that was just constructed maybe within the last 2 years. And then also the one that's at Tippecanoe, down near Sam's Club Costco exit.
Ooh, wow.
I don't know who owns any of those.
That's big.
But I would guess the one that's on Tippecanoe is probably pretty close to 50 foot and close to the same size.
Okay, anyone else? Lloyd, do you have anything for staff? Okay, with that, let's move to the applicant.
Hey, well, I'd send Travis up here, but this is a long one, so let me see if I can answer as much of these as I can. Craig Heaps, Premium Land Development, 34125 or 34259 via Bueno Drive in Yucaipa. As to the height, to go on that first, there was about an entire day that Ben spent out there just driving the freeway. There was a crane out there with a sign at each location, just holding the sign. The cars going back, we were driving back and forth. Ben was, to make sure, raise it up 5 feet, raise that down, so to get the height right, for the people that are driving by so they can see it, so that it's in the right place, so they're not craning their necks and it's not too low in their line of vision, so it was just right. So that's one of the things I wanted to bring out. One of the requirements was, and it's hard because sometimes you don't own static billboards, you know, the regular billboards along the way, but one was take a billboard out. If you're gonna do this, at least take a billboard out. So you know, as we're taking one out right next to where this one is. And I know my other sign isn't until the third one, but we don't have another one on the freeway corridor, so we're taking one out in the uptown area across from the Copper Kettle. It's kind of a, you know, kind of a nothing sign. And to your point about the static billboards, I just want to say, I drive up and down that freeway every day numerous times, and I didn't know there was a static billboard that was advertising a concert. So, because you just, you know, I know that there's Jacob and Romney or whoever the attorney, and hope Commissioner Mark Herring doesn't hear me saying that, but you know, the injury attorney, but you know, it's a, you know, you just get, those billboards just become so much the same thing that you don't even look at them. You know, the only time I really look at them is to see if there's a sign from one of the builders that they're advertising that they're, you know, because we've got 5 or 6 new projects now in town, you know. And it's funny, some of those projects that have taken off now are things that I've worked on in the last 5 years. And during that time, I've been working on this project the whole time too. You know, we originally, the one he referenced earlier was at the exit at Yucaipa Boulevard, that little pie-shaped lot, you know, right across from Subway type thing. It didn't work out. We'd put together a good deal with the city, revenue to the city, et cetera, et cetera. So since then, about a year and a half before we found some good locations to put the signs that made sense. Our 2 billboards are 3.4 miles apart from each other. You know, so you're not gonna come into town and see one and then see another and whatever. They're far enough apart that they're well distanced. These are city identification electronic signs, as you can see, or by the other picture. They are the city of Yucaipa. They've got the mountains. There is also one of the there's been some other design requests that we may look at, but this is the basic billboard sign. You know, it's to say you're here in Yucaipa. You know, this is where you're at, and there's some of the things that have been put up there, some of the perks that are going to go along with this thing for the city besides revenue. And one of them is that every 60 days, a different business in Yucaipa will be able to be on each one of our billboards. So they'll be able to be up there on the billboard. The advertising content will be helped to be put together by General Outdoor Advertising. And then at the end of 60 days, someone else will get pulled out of the hat to be on there. And the other whoever was on the first 60 days can either buy advertising at that point or put their name back on and go to the back of the list to do in the future.
Does the city share in any of that revenue?
Yes, the city, I think the number is $50,000 a year or a percentage of the revenue from the sign. So there is a, you know, and with 2 signs, or 3, whatever's decided on, that is, you know, that's at least significant revenue, especially with Prop F failing and now paramedics being paid by the city and some of those things. So it's important to create more revenue. I did want to say that, you know, so I've been here since my son was 2. So you know, he's 29 now. So we've been 27 years. And I think JR remembers when everybody got here, but JR remembers when everybody got here, but you know, still. But it's I think it's important to note that as I watch things, and this isn't, you know, and some people aren't going to like it that I say this, but it's not the same rural Yucaipa that it was. It's not your grandfather's Yucaipa anymore. Okay, it's different. This administration and the administration before it has taken a lot of time to make this into a destination, as opposed to just, you know, two lanes coming into a city. I was at the fair this weekend, as a side note, and someone said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Yucaipa," and they said, "Oh, I've been up north."
Yeah.
You know, and I said, "Well, no, it's not Ukiah, and it's not Eureka, it's Yucaipa. There's Redlands, there's Banning, there's, you know, we're right there." You know, first of all, these signs are going to, you know, we have Yucaipa Boulevard, but that could be any name, you know. These signs are going to help put Yucaipa a little bit more on the map, and some people aren't going to like that, but if you want the people coming up to buy wine up at your vineyards, you want people coming to the uptown area, you want people coming to the restaurants here in town, all the new stuff, the Yucaipa Point, all the new stuff coming in, then we better get the name out there a little bit more about who Yucaipa is and what we're all about, because it's a great city. I was looking today at a retail marketplace profile by Esri, and saw that per their latest report, which is it's a couple years old, but their leakage report, which is the amount of revenue that goes out of the city and does not stay in the city, is about $462 million that leaves Yucaipa and gets spent in other cities, that doesn't get spent here. And Redlands has $181 million in excess over and above what they're projected to get. Why? Because people are leaving town to go shopping there, or people aren't coming to Yucaipa because they don't know about it. We have a beautiful performing arts center. Most people end up going to Citizens Bank Arena, if that's what it's still called now, or the Honda Center or Staples Center to go to a concert when we have concerts here. And we can even have bigger headline events if people will come. And if you're advertising on these billboards, people are going to drive down the freeway and say, oh my gosh, Fleetwood Mac's going to be at Yucaipa in 2 weeks. I got to get tickets, you know? So we have the Music and Arts Festival. We have farmers markets. We have all kinds of events that go on in this town that need to be told to people on the outside, not just the people in Yucaipa that go, oh, by the way, are you going to the farmer's market on Friday, you know? I mean, we have to support our local businesses much, much more. And I take issue with some of the letters that I saw, and I know everybody has their opinion, and that's good, but say there's no benefit to the citizens or the residents of Yucaipa. That's not true. Because the amount of benefits that are come to this, I mean, there's Ben's working on a specific plan for the AVA, for the wine up on the North Bench. And the amount of money that's gonna come into the city as a result of those vineyards up there is incredible. The amount of money that are gonna be spent at the restaurants and things like that, you know, in reading the report. But they gotta know that it's here, and they gotta know where to get off the freeway. And this isn't just, oh yeah, I've been to Yucaipa, I went and picked apples, you know, which is, I've heard that a million times before too, because they just, you know, and when they get off at Oak Glen, they don't even come into Yucaipa because they just drive up the back. They see Denny's and Carl's Jr. as they drive up to go pick their apples and go to Riley's Farms or whatever they do up there, or so forth. So I think this is a very important project for the growth of the city of Yucaipa. And I don't say that just because I represent it, I say it because I believe in it. And I've been working on this thing for 5 years because I do believe in it. And this location is a good location, and the one that's just 3.4 miles down the freeway, which is the third one that'll come up, is a good location as well. They're well spaced and well thought out, so that you don't have that situation where you have the repetitiveness. One's on one side of the freeway, one's on the other. And by the way, that sign is facing eastbound,
Is it?
the billboard you were asking about, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say, Craig, I don't oppose these billboards. I think they're planned well. I think they're right for what the city needs for all the reasons you say. I don't personally think we need 3 of them, because these are monument billboards that you put on each end of the town. I don't see the need for a 3rd billboard somewhere personally, but that's me personally.
So let me say this.
For all of those reasons, I think they're great projects.
I'm not going to comment on that because there's another applicant in the room.
Well,
But, you know, I mean, you know, this is our original design. This was our original agreement with the city. This, for all intents and purposes, took the place of the original billboard that we were putting in, because this is, the reason it's first on the list is because it was the first one by case number.
right.
Our other one is the 3rd one, but it's the one at the other end of town, which is a great location, the Dinosaur Tire up on the hill and so forth. We've got them on both sides of the freeway. And to answer your other question about general outdoor advertising, they have a beautiful one in Lake Elsinore. There's the Lake Elsinore Storm, which is a great billboard if you ever go look at that. They have one in Rialto, they have one in Fontana, they have one in Ontario, they have one in Eastville, they have one in Paris. They have one down in Corona. I mean, they have them all over the place. And by the way, not to get into specific numbers, but these are $1 million billboards. These are not cheapies. You know, these aren't TVs on a stick. These are nice billboards, and they're designed with that in mind. And, you know, I don't know what the time frame is to even produce it and install it and so forth. I do have, when we get to the end of this, if there's technical questions, I have Tim Lynch here from General Outdoor Advertising who can answer any technical questions that, I'm not gonna pretend to be a billboard expert. All I do know is, I know Yucaipa and I know, I think I know what really makes it work. So anyway, with that, any questions, I'm free. Good.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Is he
He's
part of the
the
team?
applicant.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, Tim Lynch, General Outdoor Advertising. I'm the owner of the company that my parents founded in 1954, the year before I was born. I probably shouldn't have said that. Now you know how old I am. But I look really young, so. One thing
Yeah,
that I
me
think
too.
that just wanted to add in the presentation, so to discount for local businesses, well, our company always does that. We're a locally owned and operated company. We've been here for 40 years in the Inland Empire. However, in this proposal, our proposal says we are going to offer free advertising to local businesses. Our signs will always have local business for free on them, 60 days at a time. And we will maintain a waiting list. So anybody that wants to get on, if they're a local Yucaipa business, they will be advertised for 60 days on each of our signs on the freeway. And we will continue to rotate through a waiting list that we will maintain and allow anybody to get on there for free, any business in the city. It's not just discounted, this is free. So besides the public service announcements, which would be for your PAC and your any of the concerts, things of that nature, we are adding a second feature, which is free advertising for local businesses.
So when you talk about free, then if an event or some business outside of the city of Yucaipa would want to advertise their project or their event, that would be a charge to them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
As much as we could get.
That's good. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ben, do we have any public comments?
Yes, we do. We have three. As I kind of noted at the start of the presentation, because we're kind of bifurcating kind of the approval discussion. Any public comment can speak on the general plan amendment or this particular application now, and then I'll recall the names when the other two projects, so if they want to speak on those specific projects, they can do so as well. That way, if they have any comments on the overall general plan amendment, that can be covered first. So I'll call up the first name, Pamela Smythe.
Tony? Yeah, you got the timer.
As I noted, they're going to take action on the general plan amendment, the code, and one of the signs first. Then the other plan commissioner will come back to talk about the one you're interested in. So if you want to talk about the general plan amendment, you can do that first, or just the.
Can I come back and talk about mine?
Okay, if you could state your name and address for the record,
Pamela
and remember you have 3 minutes.
31133 Outer Highway 10. I live in the city of Redlands. Good evening. I'm a 72-year resident of your community, a product of your schools, a 1963 graduate of YHS, teacher there, and at Crafton Hills College. My property has shared your boundary lines with the city of Redlands since the time of your incorporation. I'm going to just now make a comment in response to the project you just heard. I would like to see that if you're going to pass these billboards, that they be the same height. The billboard in front of my house is 55 feet high. It was approved for an ordinance, a variance 2 times. It started at 35, it went to 45, now it's at 55. It is colossal. 55 feet high is incredibly high. I think 50, 45, I think would do the job for everyone. I live on a baseball throw from this freeway. I live with all these billboards. And so I think you can, if you, these are, you know, beautiful signs, of course, but 72 feet high is extravagant. 55 is too much, 50 is okay. I think you can achieve the same with 45. And I'll be back to, thank you, I'll be back to speak about the other one.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one is Rick Hurling.
Rick Hurling, I'm at 32261 Dunlap. That's our yard right now, and we purchased some property along the corridor this past year, and my brother and I, we own Hurling Construction, and we're going to develop the property. We've been meeting with Ben and I forget her, the engineer, what's her name again? Katrina, yeah. So we're in the process of getting ready to go through the planning and getting that all set up. And in the meantime, I figured, well, if you got 3 signs, if you could just make it 4. I'm not looking to do a giant monument or anything like that, but we do have a billboard that faces, it's an east and west. And when we redo the project or redo the property, we're going to take it out, but because we have to redo the elevations. But if that's possible, I mean, I'd like to be open, if you guys were open to, you know, something. I know you spoke upon, you know, maybe smaller, more digital, you know, at some of those locations. Something like that. I'm not looking to do a 50-foot sign like that, but, you know, just, I just wanted to, you know, I'm for it, and if you guys were willing, you know, maybe 3.5 signs. We'd go like that. So anyways, I just wanted to see if, you know, if you guys would just be interested in the possibility of keeping that open, because as we work with Ben and the planning department and then eventually engineering, we can, you know, maybe work that sign into the construction, since we will be doing that in the next year. That's all I had.
Thanks, sir. With that, Ben, are we talking about no more billboards or lighted billboards or electronic billboards? That would be it?
So right now, as noted, the general plan amendment and the ordinance is to allow for up to 3, which corresponds to 3 separate applications that we've received. And so we put a number on it. That way there wasn't just, you know, a bunch of billboards. Right now, the policy is no new billboards. And so making sure that the Pandora's box was tied with the applications we have, rather than taking the leap that council may want more billboards than what's proposed.
So if we limit it, just for an example, to the 2, you know, electronic billboards, but that doesn't mean another business on the corridor can't put up a lighted sign, but would it have to be within the structure, or are they out?
So they wouldn't be able to do a off-site advertising structure. So they couldn't advertise for products not on the property. They can still, if they have freeway frontage, they could still do a monument type sign or freestanding sign that advertises their business. There's no limitation on that. And those elements are not a part of this particular application.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, we have another one, Ben?
Yeah, the third public comment is Caesar Merrifield.
Hello, my name is Caesar Marufo. I am here representing the Yucaipa Chamber of Commerce. I am one of the board of directors, and when this project came across our desk, we looked it over, and everyone voted unanimously in favor of it. We think it's a win-win for local businesses, obviously. I think it's going to be good for local business to have some relative affordable advertising here locally. It'll bring some insight and some keeping some dollars here locally as well. And so I just wanted to represent the chamber here and say that we were in support of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is that it, Ben?
That is all the public comments we have, and so I'll let you guys do some discussion, but if you are to kind of make a motion based on how Vice Chair Markarian is not part of it, it would be 4 items, essentially items listed under the agenda report except for C and D, which would be pulled and then voted on once Vice Chair Markarian is back.
So we could vote on this particular billboard now?
Yes, as well as the general plan.
Need to,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, Vice Chair Markarian cannot weigh in on the ordinance.
So
the
voting
debate, or
on this particular signage, are we putting in any other restrictions as to how many signs or not at this time?
So the first step as a formality or as part of the step to approve this particular application is the general plan amendment and the development code have to be essentially done either first, so you could take that separately, approve the ordinance and general plan amendment, and then take this action on its own. And then we'll bring Vice Chair Markarian back and then vote on the last 2 projects separately. But the general plan amendment, so the 3 signs and the development code have to be essentially acted on either concurrent with or prior to taking action on this particular site.
Okay, got it. So we want to
No,
we want to vote on this right now,
well, both.
both right now?
Yeah, so the ordinance and development code need to, or the general plan amendment, the ordinance, and the environmental document need to be approved first. And then you can, as part of that motion, also approve this project if that is the Plan Commission's desire or recommend approval. And then the last 2 will come back. But the ordinance, the number of signs, the code requirements need to be as part of the first step.
Okay, so before we get into the voting, let's start. Lloyd, you want to make a
So-
comments?
Well, so we're going to, the motion will then be that we adopt Resolution 2021-21, which will approve the general plan amendment. And we're going to approve project, the one on 35110. Well, let's see, that's the general outdoor. And then it would be project 21-096. No, that's not the right one. No, that's not the right one.
Yeah, so it'd be A, B, which I realize, B would be approved first reading of ordinance number 393. I must have slipped on that language. And then it would be, as part of the effort, certainly the MND and mitigation monitoring reporting program, the notice of determination, and then you would essentially vote on number E now, which is this particular application and the architecture review as well. So you could do all of them, essentially all the motion that's listed on A through I with the exception of C and D to approve the 3 billboards plus this
Right, because
particular
those are
application.
separate projects.
Right.
Yep.
But the general plan amendment and the ordinance change is what we need
Right.
really first before we
A
do anything else.
and B and E.
Yeah, and the following ones too, the CEQA motion as part of that. And I do want to quickly clarify, B should be approved first reading by title only as read by staff, ordinance number 393.
So how would you suggest we word the motion?
So it could be, if the motion right now is perhaps for simplicity, is approving just the legislative actions or recommending approval of the legislative actions. So it'd be A, B, F, G, and H. And then it would be then following that, you would take a separate vote on E and I, and then you would do C, D, and I again later on.
I think my concern would be though is 3 billboards, if we're gonna approve 3, which I don't, you've got 3 main exits in Yucaipa right now. I know there's more planned, but you've got Yucaipa Boulevard, Oak Glen Road, and then of course County Line Road. So I don't see the reason for bunching 2 entry monument signs like this at one end of town. And I'm sorry, Ben, but I disagree that, I think if you're gonna put a third one anyplace else, it should be down by Oak Glen Road, because that's all industrial and commercial planned. I think it makes more sense. If you miss the first one coming into town, you've got the next one for Oak Glen Road. that you can see as you come around. And I think it's more benefit to getting people off the freeway. I like these billboards. I'm not opposed to them at all. I do think the rest of the signage in town needs to be upgraded, but that can be something separate. So I think if we approve this for 3 or 2, whatever it is, there needs to be some spacing between these things so that they're not bunched on one end of town, and personal opinion on it.
Bart, you have anything you want to bring up before we vote?
Yeah, I had a question. Sorry, I didn't bring it up earlier. Usually these conditional use permits are in perpetuity, but we have a development agreement attached to this one. Is there an expiration on that? Or
The
we
development
would-
agreement does have some provisions on kind of the timelines. A lot of it is because it's a offsite kind of property interest, so the sign company isn't necessarily the underlying property owner. Part of the element is also maintaining the land use rights to their billboard structure. If the lease terms for the ownership terminate, then obviously they would have to remove the billboard as well. And then there's some provisions along within each DA. If there's elements where, let's say, relocation is necessary, perhaps Caltrans doing a significant right-of-way change on stuff, and one of the sites happens to be within that, there's some provisions or at least some assurances for those respective applicants to find another location that can be approved as well.
So is it possible a predecessor of this board would get a chance to look at this again?
Say that again?
In the future, a planning commission or the city council would get a chance to look at this approval again in 20 years or 10 years? Or are we making a decision that this electronic billboard is going to be there potentially forever?
It'd be more the latter. I'm trying to, it does say the initial term of the agreement shall commence on the effective date and continue for 30 years. So right now it's built in for a 30-year horizon for the development agreement.
Okay. And in 30 years, what would the city get to do?
Yeah, it'd be updating the provisions and taking it back through for the development agreement.
How many miles is it from County Line Road?
Would that include reviewing the project for its consistency with whatever development code is in place then?
It would likely be some sort of element to that effect. The DA also does include language that, let's say there's updated to state or federal law regarding electronic messaging centers of what performance requirements that they have. They would have to conform to that as well. So it does give the city the reserve powers to make sure that, if there is any regulatory changes that are kind of outside of our control, that we can still enforce those rules and make sure that they're consistent with the current laws in place. In terms of city code stuff, it would be kind of similar to another CP. If we change the policy later on, these would fall within the legal non-conforming kind of status.
And then I want to confirm that regardless of what we do here, this is going to the city council.
Yes.
So there's no appeal filing that's required, no additional funds required. This is going to go regardless.
Yes, in the event that the planning commission approves or recommends approval of the legislative stuff. Technically, if the planning commission recommends denial of the general plan amendment in the ordinance, then the appeal elements would then have to get triggered to bring that back to city council.
So if we deny the legislative change, it's theoretically dead here.
That is correct.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Richard, you're up.
I'm with Tony. I like two signs, or if the third one was, we have 3 exits, so, you put 2 right here and 1 way down at the end of the city on that other off-ramp. I mean, it's
I think if you're gonna have three, that's what makes sense.
yeah, and I'm talking about monument signs, you know. So,
I look at these as different than, this is a monument, like you said. This is the entry, the gateway to Yucaipa, and that's what it designates and defines.
one coming in, one
There's
going out.
There's a whole different thing, that, and I think it should be kind of defined that way in the ordinance. But to leave it open, so if someone wants to come back in with a zone change for the smaller billboards, just because they're ugly and they're old, you know, they'd look great if they were modernized.
Yeah,
And,
so part of the element, at least the way everything is structured right now, is because the policy, the status quo, so to speak, for the existing legislative thing is new billboards are permitted. And so in an effort to address, you know, some of the aesthetic elements of the general plan is if we do allow such structures, the expectation for what they should look like is a higher level than just putting a screen on there. It should have some sort of identifying features for the city of Yucaipa. And so that's why these particular legislative elements are structured the way that they are. And so certainly other efforts to modernize existing billboard structures kind of throughout the area that is a little bit of a separate discussion that city council can certainly weigh in on, then we can pursue that
But
process.
if we were to approve this as what you're recommending for 3 billboards, but with the condition that they had to be only one within proximity of each of the major off-ramps in Yucaipa, is that possible?
I would say it is to some degree. I think what complicates everything right now is just because Vice Chair Mark Herring will be able to vote on the other 2 billboards. So let's say hypothetically this becomes the Yucaipa Boulevard billboard, then whether or not the other applicant that's in this proximity would be able to kind of make the case as part of that effort and keeping that there. It may be more of a element that you kind of recommend approval of the land use entitlements, but perhaps making a note that council, since they can vote on the totality of stuff, maybe consider where the 3 is more focused on one at each off-ramp kind of area. And so rather than 2 towards Yucaipa Boulevard, maybe they weigh in, you know, as a full council on those specific stuff. That way both applicants have an opportunity to pitch their entitlement at the same time. And that may be
Or
a
we
way
could
to approach it.
Put possibly a distance between, they have to be probably a mile and a half, something like that. That would put the other one right at Oakland Road then.
Yeah, and that could certainly,
Just don't see the need for this type of large billboard with City of Yucaipa on it and their city logo, 3 of them.
Yeah, I don't either.
2 of them bunched together, whichever ones are approved, you know, ultimately. And I understand, you know, we want to give everybody the chance to.
But then putting in something in the amendment or something to upgrade current billboards can we do that?
I don't.
yeah, so again, the challenge is environmental review did not address that stuff, and it isn't part of, right now, again, the application for the legislative stuff is as a vessel in order to approve or even consider these individual projects. We can certainly look into that further, but it isn't part of what these individual applicants are doing. And so as part of the analysis, the code, the time effort for those efforts aren't necessarily what these applicants are paying through their application fees to process. And so it may be better more as a note for city council to consider amending our billboard provisions for existing, you know, legal non-conforming billboard structures and what that looks like. And we pursued that independently of this, since it isn't something that's been analyzed. It isn't part of what the applicants are expecting or proposing at this time.
I would personally like to see if we maybe vote on the general plan, get that out of the way, bring Chris back in, listen to the
Yeah,
other
I
2
would.
projects that are presented, so that we're not making a decision and voting on something without hearing the other 2.
Right.
And then excuse Chris again while we vote on this one. You know, I'm just,
Thinking.
I don't like voting on one of the two that are so close to each other without hearing presentation on both.
Yeah, I think part of and it's more of a procedural element in the FPPC is when you have this segmentation of the project, essentially the action that needs to occur, the procedure is the action that needs to occur with the absentee member has to happen first, and then they come in for everything else with it. And so that's how that's why the meeting is kind of set up the way it is to conform with that requirement where his conflict is on the ordinance and this particular project, so he doesn't get an opportunity to make a recommendation with those elements, and then once he no longer has a conflict, then he can weigh on the rest. So it is.
That's what it is, that's what it is.
It does make it a little bit complicated. When I was certainly reaching out to our legal counsel, kind of with that unique element, because it is 3 projects, they all have to have the ordinance and development code, or the development code and the general plan amendment to even entertain a action in favor of the projects. And so it has happened there, and his property just happened to kind of fit within that circle. And it's a little bit more complicated. As part of the benefit, though, is all these projects, again, have to go to city council. So even if perhaps it's a motion to approve the ordinance development code and then kind of a tentative approval of the different sign applications, but perhaps with the note that city council may want to restrict, the 3 billboards to where it's only within proximity to one off-ramp location, then the council could certainly make that decision and then vote on the individual use permits on that assumption as well. And that may be a way to at least defer the policy concern to council, so then that way they can take the full balance of everything.
Yeah, I just think it's unfair that we vote on one without hearing the other.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
since they're
let's,
both the ones.
let's see if let's get a motion and vote on the addendum amendment. Get a motion.
Since I'm the most vocal, I'll
Yeah.
attempt this. What you had just said, Ben, is on the general plan amendment and on how can we structure that so that my motion would be that we don't allow more than 1 billboard. If city council wants to approve 3, I think that's up to them. But I think my recommendation that I would make in the motion is that we only approve 1 in proximity to each ramp of the freeway of this type of billboard. And so how can we structure that with a recommendation to city council?
So probably,
Not limiting it to 1 though.
No, it's 3 and then.
Right. In a
But
spacing.
that's a recommendation, right?
so maybe what would be appropriate is to vote on items A, B, F, G, and H with amendment to the ordinance and general plan amendment to specify, probably more so the ordinance to specify that such sign structures will be limited to 1 near the off-ramp.
But our recommendation to city council.
Yeah, to that. And then, so that could be the first motion, and then we'll kind of take all 3 and, it may be in how the ordinance is set up with that one of the applications is recommended for denial, and then the city council may decide to kind of decide which one makes more sense or which one is a more appropriate land use based on that CUP.
And then can we put a distance between it? Would that be easier?
Well, that's basically a distance if we're recommending that no more than 1 at each overpass.
Okay, all right.
So I'll attempt this. I'll make a motion that we approve the general plan amendment. And let's see, so that would be the policy CDL,
Yeah, so it'd be a recommendation to city council to approve the.
recommendation to city council to approve the general plan amendment. And it would be to modify the policy CDL-4.6 that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And I'm sorry, what was the second half of that?
So then it would be then approve, first reading by title only, ordinance number 393, with a revision to the ordinance to specify that only one electronic messaging center be allowed within the
Exactly like
sphere
that.
of the,
And that's what
Of
he
the operate,
said,
yep.
yeah.
Exactly like that. Okay.
and then it would be, then following that would be the, adopt the findings specific to the development
A,
code and
B, F,
ordinance.
G, and H, right?
Yep.
Okay. That's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll be happy to second that if I'm correct, that we are approving it as recommended by staff
Yes.
with the the attached recommendation to the city council that they consider revising what we're sending them to limit it just to proximity to the three off-ramps.
Right.
Right.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, we got a second. So we have any other discussion?
Well, I go with that, but I would just wonder if that's more restrictive than what it needs to be, because it seems we could say we can allow 10 signs in that corridor, but if each one has to be reviewed, we could approve the first two and none after that. And we could justify the non-approval by saying we don't want more than 2. And so if we put it in as a restrictive requirement now, my question is, isn't that a little bit kind of just restrictive? Unnecessarily, I don't know.
Well, I think for these large monument signs like this, like the one up here,
Yeah?
that are, 50-foot tall and say City of Yucaipa and have the city crest on them, I don't think we need,
No, and it may be. If we put it
maybe
in-
other electronic billboards at some point.
If we
that are
cast it in concrete tonight and the city council approves it, then there's no room to discuss it down the road. That's all I'm thinking.
Without going in for another general
Go
plan.
back
and
into
then,
that
To
all
go
over
back in
again.
and revise the general plan,
Again, just like we're doing
like
now.
what we're doing right now, a couple hours. I'm sorry. Okay, I mean, I'm not opposed to what you're saying, but I just am wondering if it's unnecessarily restrictive, but maybe I'm wrong.
So we have that motion down? Okay, so let's have a vote then. All those in favor?
Did Bart
All right,
second? Okay.
yeah, we have our first. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's 4, that's 5 and 0.
Okay.
So now I bring in my compadre.
No.
No, so the next one would then be taking action on item number E, which is the conditional use permit and development agreement for 21-154, which is the subject application on Outer Highway 10. Whether or not this design and elements of this is appropriate, and then we'll bring Vice Chair Mercarian back for the last 2.
Since I'm the one that's, I'll, pardon me?
You're the commander.
No.
You what?
I don't like the ideal of voting on one without hearing the other one. But if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do, and then it goes to city council and they can make the decision on it. So, this is 21-096, is that correct?
This is the 21-154.
154.
154, okay. So I'll make a motion that we approve the CUP for 21-154 with staff's recommendations.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Lloyd?
That location is not really near an interchange, which is what you wanted, isn't it?
Well, it is, it's just, it's past the interchange.
But it's not nearly as appropriately placed as the one at 31103 Outer Highway, which is 21-104.
Well, that's my problem with not being able to hear that one. first, right? I don't see any reason not to approve this because it is within fairly close proximity.
Yeah.
And Ben's saying he's got enough height on it so that you can see it over the top of the overpass as you're coming up the hill, right?
Yeah, they both had done that, and then one of the elements with this particular sign is the location. There's existing buildings that they're trying to, that they're gonna sit above so that it fits there, because they
Right.
can't go the opposite way, because that's where the public right of way, and there's Edison utility lines that they can't encroach upon there. So their design has to kind of cantilever over the building.
Right.
In order to fit,
Right.
physically. Yep.
And so we can't hear any objections to the other sign or even know what the presentation is before we vote on this. So that's, but just based on what's given to us here that Ben says we have to vote on, I have to make the motion to approve.
I'm,
We have a first and a second.
I'm on, I know we got a first and a second, but we can't hear them both then, right?
What?
We can't hear the other one without voting on this one.
I suppose if the commission wanted to, so Vice Chair Markarian can't vote on this particular application, but if I guess the chair chooses to not include him on the deliberation for the last two, then we could take action on all three, and then he just won't be a part of the overall discussion, which is certainly may be cleaner. I don't know if he has any thoughts on individual applications that were outside of this particular location, but that may be an easier way to break it up, or at least give the due
You
process.
have a motion and a second, so I think we got to vote on this. If you want to vote me down, then you can.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to vote on the one item without hearing the other. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Aye. One opposed, okay. So I guess we'll pass that one then.
Okay. So now Chris can come back in.
Yep.
I don't like that.
It seems very lugubrious to me. That's right, that's right. They're the ones that have to put the final imprimatur on it. That's right. Oh, sure, absolutely. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I could have definitely been coaching soccer. Soccer practice would have been over. All right.
Yeah. All right, I will continue the presentation. As a quick kind of note to catch up Vice Chair Markarian, the Plan Commission did recommend approval of the Development Code and General Plan Amendment, and so with that motion already carried, now we will vote on two additional CUP applications and development agreements that have been submitted for electronic messaging centers consistent with the proposed Development Code.
So you got the amendment and you got the one that's next to it, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
So
We're gonna talk about the other two?
that is correct. So we will build off. So the next application is 21-096, conditional use permit and development agreement, which is under ordinance number 408 to permit an electronic messaging center on an existing commercial property at 13500 Calamasa Boulevard. The property itself is located within the industrial community industrial land use district and does feature an existing repair facility. It was Dinosaur Tire. I think a different tenant might be there now. One thing as part of the development agreements, as noted, they're all structured the same, and they do include the removal of a existing billboard structure There's not a structure currently located on this site, and so the applicant has agreed to pull a different structure off that's located on Yucaipa Boulevard as you approach the Uptown District, and so that is listed in the development agreement. And then this proposed structure will be 55 feet at the top of the display. As part of their line of sight and visibility, there are some trees and other obstructions along it, and this was the one where we did, through the flag test process of validating what should be the minimum height in order to ensure visibility. This one was one that was able to get dropped down quite a bit, and so certainly worked with the applicant to ensure the greatest visibility of the structure without it being excessively tall for what the purpose needs to be. As part of the processing, no specific comments were received on this particular proposal. Then I will get into the last application as well for the Plan Commission to consider, which is 21-104. It's conditional use permit and a development agreement, ordinance number 409, to permit electronic messaging center. They replace an existing static billboard at a commercial property at 31103 Outer Highway. Now, this property is located in the CS Land Use District and does feature an existing sales facility for trailers and other structures. As noted, this is essentially going to replace a similarly sized billboard structure in that location and will be approximately 55 feet at the top of display. As part of this review and included in the packet, as well as some recent notes that were sent out, provided to the Plan Commissioners this evening from a commenter, as well as an email or 2 emails as well. Some concerns about light trespass issues with the proposal and safety. I do want to note kind of quickly that there is an existing billboard at the subject site, and so the comments do reference some of the lighting issues that arise from the existing billboard. As part of the LED technology, it is designed to be a bit more directional. It really is to focus the light along the line of sight. And so with that, rather than having a light shining onto the billboard and casting out, the light trespass issues that are currently on site will be reduced. The applicant can certainly speak to the application, but they have included some additional light mitigating technology from the manufacturer, so using a little bit higher spec of signage as well as additional louvers to address those concerns. The city development code standards that the council or that the Plan Commission had weighed in on tonight, does it see kind of the statewide requirements? And then certainly, the Plan Commission can consider these comments that were provided in terms of their ultimate recommendation on this specific land use entitlement. And then there was additional comment from Scenic America received about safety as well in response to this application. And so with that, that does kind of conclude my presentation. Both applicants for each one are here to answer any questions. They do have, I think, some representatives on terms of some of the technology, if there's questions about some of the mitigating factors that they've included in their proposals, and I'm happy to answer any questions on this.
I have a few questions.
Sure.
I'll start. I'm here. I'm back. And I just wanted, before I get into my questions, note that I have reviewed this packet. This has been a significantly well thought of response and public comments, and I don't know who, let me see the names I have here. Pamela Smythe has done significant research. I own a law firm if you're interested in the job. It's very well put together research on distracted driving and all that. And my only thing is I wanted to take a moment to let everyone know in the public that public safety is all of our concern. And the letters from Amanda Fry and Pamela Smythe, Brian Foote, Thomas Gleesberg, David Matuzak, and Mr. Fletcher, I believe. All of these 6 items I personally reviewed and considered the research, and they're very well thought and put together comments, and we appreciate them. And with that being said, I had a few questions on the height. So I know these 2 are 55. I didn't get a chance to see the one that's going to be adjacent to me. Can I at least know how tall it's going to be?
So that one was 50 feet at that. And so as part of the development code provisions as well as the ordinance, they trigger what's called a FLAD test to help validate the sign. So what happens is the applicant will essentially have a company come out with a large crane, a big vinyl banner that they hang up and float over the freeway at kind of a high intervals. And I essentially drive along the freeway and go, have them raise up the sign, each little bit until it becomes visible and say, once it's visible, then that's the height that's needed.
Got it.
It doesn't need to go above that. And so that's the level of effort that was done for all these particular applications. As I mentioned, the one on Outer Highway 10 that is proposed before you now is the same height as the existing billboard structure that's currently there. The one on Calamasa Boulevard, which is the other application, that one we did drive by. The original design was, I think, about 10 feet higher. And so through this FLAD test, we were able to kind of validate, hey, this is a little bit visible here. We don't need to go crazy. And so certainly for the applicants, they want to make sure it's in the line of sight, and building a taller structure and the engineering that goes into it, if they don't need to do that, if it doesn't help the sign, kind of works out as well. So it's more of a validation to make sure that it's going to be visible where it needs to be, and no more, no less.
So for clarity, it's the lowest point of where it's visible. We're not going Tower of Babylon kind of thing and as high as we can go.
That is correct in terms of at least when we were driving by and kind of looking out when you're driving along the freeway when you can see it. And I do have better than 20/20 vision, so perhaps I'm a little bit more of a discerning eye than some others, but that at least what was the intent behind the FLAD test is to make sure that there's some sort of check and balance, that before applicants for any kind of freeway-oriented sign, whether it's a billboard or commercial advertising for on-site purposes, that we're at least having a chance to go, hey, you don't need to build the tallest sign in the world for the sake of doing it. Sometimes, especially when it comes to on-premises signs, those manufacturers, they tend to like to build the biggest signs that they can. And so having that FLAD test kind of helps kind of make sure that we're within the realm of what should be reality for those structures.
And thank you for that, Ben. So my next set of questions is going to be about the design. I know from the some of the pictures I saw in here, it's going to have a Yucaipa thing on it. Are all three of these signs going to look like they're Yucaipa signs? Because there's one in like Ontario I've seen that says Ontario on the side by the new mall that they built right off of the freeway. So it says Ontario. So I see that. Are all three signs going to look like that?
Yeah, so they all incorporate a very similar design motif. There's a little bit of nuances in terms of what they've chosen, but they've all tried to kind of mimic each other, have a consistent, I guess, branding theme within it. The city does have a marketing kind of little subcommittee of staff, and so they did review this and provided some comments on, the script for City of Yucaipa, so that if they are branding for Yucaipa, that those elements that we have for what city branding should be was also incorporated in this. But yes, the sign structures within kind of all the three proposals that were received are similar. Pretty much the only significantly unique element is the base treatment for the general outdoor advertising, where it has a little bit more of a defined base structure feature. And then also, based on their sign, they cantilever out backwards, whereas the pole for the Leonard and Company is in the middle of the structure. And that's more of just a design, what they have visibility and can fit everything, and isn't necessarily, I think, as much of an architectural discussion, but more just how the site lays out.
Okay, so when we're talking about the 55-foot height, is that the top of where the City of Yucaipa words are?
It's where the top of the LED display is for the billboard. And
Got it. So that few feet higher.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And the only reason I'm a lot more interested in signage, for the record, for all those people that think we sit here and we're above the law or not, I got a warning letter from Code of Enforcement that I have a temporary sign on my building. So Madeline has been very helpful in sending me all the literature I need to learn about signage. It's new to me as I learn. My only consideration is safety. And I think Ms. Smythe's research is fascinating. Like I said, I'm a personal injury attorney, so I'm very much interested in how to keep our city safe, whether it's the lighting, whether it's the distraction. I don't know how much we can address your discomfort. You're the dream house on top of the hill, and you have a beautiful view. I don't know how much we can accommodate not blocking your view, or if there's something we can do to not make it as intrusive as I think some of the pictures she's taken from her front door and some from inside, with these things being right in front of her house. But I know from my experience on the Planning Commission that a view is not a protected thing. And whether you're on Redlands and Yucaipa side, unfortunately, we have beautiful scenery that our city is growing. And Ms. Smythe, we're in a lot of trouble with the state of California for not growing as fast as they want us to grow. So we're just trying to strike that balance. And I know also from personal experience, I wanted to advertise on one of these Lamar billboards right off the freeway. They're very expensive for someone that wants to advertise a small business growing in this town. Expensive as in $3,000 to $4,000 a month for a static billboard, not an LED. So I don't know what the cost is going to be for this. I look forward to advertising on these for my business to grow, and I know a lot of the local businesses will be encouraged highly to advertise on those. So hopefully we strike the balance and make sure that we are helping our community grow in a healthy way and preserving the safety of everyone that comes through our city while maintaining the beauty of our urban setting. So that's all I have to say, because I've been sitting quietly there dying for an hour and a half.
I just wanted to tell Chris, because it wasn't, the recommendation we made to city council for approval was, how was it worded, Ben, with the recommendation of approval with the recommendation?
Yeah, so it was as part of the motion, and so this will all come to city council, is additional recommendation beyond what the development code and ordinance said that would essentially limit one such structure kind of per off-ramp area. So one would be
vicinity.
focused for Yucaipa Boulevard, one would be for Oakland
Oakland
Road,
and
if there's
County
one,
Line.
and then the Calamasa Boulevard. And so it's kind of a unique element tonight because we're not able to vote on that particular application that's kind of there. And so kind of everything will have to go city council, and then they can ultimately make which decision in terms of that policy element and how.
That's interesting. Do we have to restrict the side, whether it's north or south side of the freeway on
No,
off-ramp
just
or on-ramp?
My ideal is, or my disagreement was bunching up two monument signs, basically, is what these are, at
Well, that's a good
one
point.
exit.
How far are they? Do we know? How far are these closest two monuments from each other?
They're probably,
The one on 103, the two on Outer Highway are, I'm sure, less than a mile apart.
they're less than a mile. They're probably a couple thousand feet.
3,000 feet? How far is, because they're almost equal distance from the overpass, right? Yeah. So one is 1,500 foot from the overpass this way,
Oh,
one's
I see.
1,500 this way.
I mean, listen, I know a little bit of the history of Yucaipa. I've lived here for about 10 years now, a little over 10 years, and I know how much we didn't want cars in here. We liked horses around here more. But we're growing, and I think that's the point that these electronic billboards are bringing. It's uncomfortable for a lot of the people that still want, the apple and orange farms and, horse buggies kind of thing. But I don't know if 3,000 feet should be the limit or one per off-ramp should be the limit. Is that something that we can decide?
So the ordinance itself, the motion has been recommended with that policy. So city council ultimately is going to weigh in on that,
I see.
that specific thing. So that discussion at this point is now out of the plan commission's hands. That will go to city council. They can weigh in, if they agree with that as part of, their package. They will receive minutes from this item that discuss, provides the summary of what the plan commission had weighed in on, what their thought are, and the city council may take that information and weave or make refinements based on what they ultimately, as a policy level element, since it is ultimately a city council decision that they have to make, they'll have the benefit of kind of knowing what the planning commission was hoping to accomplish with that recommendation, and then can tailor it as whatever made sense as a
So the vote was to amend the general plan with the limitation of one per off-ramp, electronic billboard.
recommendation.
Recommendation.
That they own.
And then the city council can adopt that or make it more restrictive or not have that limitation.
That
what
is
you're
correct.
saying? Got it.
But they will have the benefit of knowing what the thought process was of the plan.
All right.
And then we were told we had to vote on this one while you were out of the room.
Yeah, the one next to me, it's
Now-
gonna be right across from me. It's gonna distract me.
But without being able to hear the presentation on the other one that's in close proximity to it. And so I made the motion, and then it was seconded, and then Ben changed his story and said, well, we. No, but
I know the one that, and I spoke to Ben before the meeting today about, I think, the CUP for 21154, is right across from my balcony, and I have a beautiful view of Highway 10 and the other side of the outer highway. It's very nice. You should come visit. So it's gonna be visible from my office, but I don't have a problem with this. I don't care. As it being a negative thing for me, that I would vote against it, but I appreciate the consideration. I'm never there is right.
So I guess at this point, if there's no more questions for me, the applicants can come up and talk about their respective proposals, and then perhaps provide some additional detail and go from there.
Just state your name and address for the records, please, and you got 3 minutes.
Andy
Oh, wait a minute,
Goodman,
that's the
I
applicant.
represent, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, sir.
Oh, sorry. Andy Goodman, I represent Leonard and Company, and my address is 622 Vincent Park, Redondo Beach, California, 90277. I would like to clarify a couple of things, and then I'll get into some prepared remarks that I think answer a lot of the questions that you have and some of the concerns. When we came to Yucaipa to apply for the project and to talk to planning about that, we were told that this was a design that the council members liked. And what we did, okay, so what we did was we ended up copying this design from General Outdoor. So it's not something that we're married to. It is something that we heard that the council members liked, and that we just kind of followed along for the ride in terms of that part of the process. Leonard and Company is a local billboard company with an office here in Southern California in Long Beach, California, and we specialize in affordable outdoor advertising opportunities to local businesses. Leonard and Company has also joined the Chamber of Yucaipa. Leonard and Company is here tonight because our project is supported by the council members. With their support, our project is in front of you at the Planning Commission this evening. This has been a well-thought-out and planned project with the city of Yucaipa. The city will benefit from the capabilities of the new Yucaipa Gateway signs. Leonard and Company would also like to thank staff for their support of the project. City Manager Casey and Planning Manager Matlock and their staff have done a good job in preparing this agenda item. They have been thorough with their research and requests and have responded appropriately to all inquiries about the project. In August of 2021, Leonard and Company applied to the state of California, Caltrans Division, for a preliminary determination of the proposed Yucaipa gateway sign that we have proposed here this evening. The response back from Caltrans was a preliminary approval for the location. What that means is that Caltrans will give us the necessary permits for the digital sign at the time that the City Council approves our project through the readings and then the appeal period. Caltrans has applied all its rules and regulations to this site and has determined that it meets all the right criteria. Leonard & Company has also reached out to the Yucaipa Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber has reviewed the project and the development agreement for the Yucaipa Gateway sign. The Chamber has concluded that this project is a benefit to the City of Yucaipa, especially for local businesses, Chamber and city events, Explore Yucaipa, and to the residents of Yucaipa through public messaging and emergency alerts. Because of these benefits, the Leonard & Company project has gained the support of the Chamber, and I believe one of the directors from the Chamber is here tonight to let you know that he is in support of our project. If approved, this project, Leonard & Company will be using Watchfire signs as its digital supplier. In addition to all the special technology included on the Watchfire signs to direct the image towards the freeway, Leonard & Company has agreed to add a 14-foot tall by 3-foot wide side louvers to both sides of the gateway sign. So that's 14 feet tall by 3 feet coming out on the sides of the location, on the sides of the gateway sign. And what it does is these wide louvers to the exterior sides of the digital faces to satisfy any additional concerns by the public. There is a Watchfire representative, Josh Haygood, has also made himself available this evening to answer any questions that you may have about the digital sign. Josh is making himself available via telephone if you'd like to talk with him or ask him any questions about his digital signs. Leonard & Company has been a member of the local business community for decades. The proposed site has a static billboard located on it that is owned by Leonard & Company. Our proposal to remove the existing static billboard and replace it with the new Yucaipa Gateway sign means that our project does not add any additional signage to the City of Yucaipa. One comes down, a new one goes up. Finally, the new Yucaipa Gateway sign and development agreement provide the following benefits to the City of Yucaipa, local businesses, and residents. A development agreement has been proposed between Leonard & Company and the City of Yucaipa. This strengthens the public planning process, encourages private participation, and reduces economic risk. By approving our project, the result of our upgrade does not cause the increase of the number of signs in Yucaipa. Leonard has agreed to remove the existing sign that is currently on the property, replacing it with the Yucaipa Gateway sign. You had a question about future rules and regulations that happen. Any future changes to the Uniform Building Code, to the City Code, to the State Code, or the federal laws and regulations that affect digital signage is applicable based upon the language written in the development agreement. Leonard & Company will pay all processing fees. There'll be no cost to the city. Leonard & Company will pay Yucaipa a minimum of $1.5 million over the next 30 years. The new proposed Yucaipa Gateway sign is located on the far west end of the city limits before the Yucaipa exit. So if we are talking about having some gateway signs coming into the city and bookending the city, it kind of makes sense that this is the gateway sign coming from the west to the east into the city. Excuse me for a second, please. The new gateway sign will welcome people to the City of Yucaipa, and the city logo will be located on the column. The Yucaipa Gateway sign will be installed with dimmers that will reduce the brightness of the image at dusk down to less than 10% of power and not be over 0.3 foot candles above ambient light. So we will do all the necessary light tests on the sign. We have talked with Pamela about the lighting on the sign. Mike Ondeck and I, Vice President of Leonard & Company, spent 2 hours with Pamela talking about different ways that we were going to be able to mitigate the light coming off of our sign. So that's why we had discussed the 3-foot louvers on the side that go 14 feet up in the air. We have also talked to her about ambient light. I believe that a lot of what you've read from her letters and in her reports also talks about the security lighting that is currently on the property. And what we explained to her is that's part of ambient light. So if we do our light tests and we keep the security lights on that current property the way they are, we do our light test, the brightness of the images that are on the sign will be even less because that's all considered part of the ambient light. So I think that's an important consideration. And we've done everything we possibly can, Pamela, to address her concerns. We have also we have also offered to plant additional trees on her property that would help to mitigate some of the light coming onto the property also, which I think is going to do more for the security lighting that's coming onto her property than the digital sign will have, that the gateway sign will have. And also, there is a difference between upward lighting, which is on the billboard right now, where the upward lighting comes up onto the vinyl and then flashes off into the atmosphere. A lot more of that light is making its way onto Pamela's property versus the digital lighting that will have the louvers on the side, the special technology that Watchfire uses on their sign and so forth. So Josh will make himself available to answer any questions if you'd like. Let me finish up here. The city has mandated the following for the Yucaipa Gateway sign as major benefits to the city, local business, and residents to the city. No advertising of tobacco, cannabis, adult entertainment, or sexually oriented messages will be allowed on the billboard. Chamber of Commerce members in good standing will receive a discount from their advertising rates. Promoting city events and public service announcements. Promoting the Yucaipa Performing Arts Center and Explore Yucaipa. Amber Alerts, FBI's Most Wanted, and City Police Department Wanted postings will take precedence on the sign. Emergency messaging for earthquakes, wildfires, and freeway closures will also be used on the sign as alerts. Local business promotion program. This was set up by the planning department and the city attorney. And the way that works is there will be no charge to businesses. One local business will be promoted for a minimum of 1 week and up to 3 weeks on the digital sign. That's over 50 businesses per year per side of the billboard. I heard what Tim had to say about putting them up for a number of months. And that's a great offer above and beyond what is being offered by the city within our agreement. So I think that's a wonderful idea. But my feeling is if a business is up there for 3 weeks and you have 50 other businesses that can come up on the sign versus an offer to keep them up for 2 months and only get 25, up there per face, maybe you do a combination of both. Maybe Tim's, suggestion is absolutely wonderful and 25 companies is good. I think 50 plus companies is even better. We want to get as many companies as possible up on the sign for free to show them the benefits of doing outdoor advertising. And lastly, ambient light tests must be completed on the new Yucaipa Gateway sign and must measure 0.3 foot candles or less of ambient light. So that's my presentation. I really appreciate you waiting to hear everybody's presentation versus, voting on what you like in terms of the locations of each of the signs. We hope that we make a great partner, a great neighbor, and we hope that our gateway sign at the west end of the city, right before the Yucaipa exit, is one of those signs that you would like to have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. I have a question before you leave, if I may. One of my, interests in the city is emergency planning and making sure that we're ready for emergencies and we're prepared and we notify our citizens. You mentioned Amber Alerts and any police notifications, FBI notifications. Would that be something accessible from Yucaipa Sheriff's Department, or is that something we have to get in touch with your company to post that?
I would say to start with that it's probably something that goes through us because of our security on the sign. Heaven forbid we have a disgruntled employee who decides to program the billboard for something that would be absolutely unacceptable. So if we keep it within our security purposes, I think we have a better chance of making sure that nothing provocative ends up on the sign.
And I appreciate that, and that was gonna be my follow-up. So when you're saying nothing provocative, we're gonna have some kind of an objective standard of what type of businesses specifically? You're gonna limit political views, you're gonna be the next Twitter, so Elon Musk buys all of these again? Or what are you gonna be limiting?
You know, there, again, I had stated some of the things that are not going to be on the billboard, not on the gateway sign, which would be tobacco, cannabis, adult entertainment, and sexually oriented messages. The planning department, the city attorney has also added in there that anything that the city views to be controversial would be considered or taken down as written in the document immediately. So,
All right, so
yeah,
that-
it's in there. It's the language is in there.
I want to make sure we clarify that, because a lot of things are controversial nowadays, and I want to know if we're going to limit certain advertising because they're Christian, because
Right.
they're Muslim, because they're homosexual.
Right.
I-
Mr. Matlock,
I
come
don't
to my
know if we
rescue
want to
here.
give a, what's the language, the city what?
I don't have the language directly.
Yeah, so it's in the development agreement. It's really to limit some of the perhaps more objectionable stuff. So the sexually oriented images being kind of a prime example, tobacco as well. Right now, because the city prohibits, commercialized marijuana facilities, that isn't allowed on the sign as well. And it's really, I think, just more if there's something that really draws attention. At the end of the day, there is, the First Amendment kind of elements of being able to provide free speech. And so, we can't just say, hey, I don't like who this person is running for this office and the city wants to stop it. We don't have that type of
Okay,
authority.
so I just want to make sure we have some kind of language there to protect anyone from advertising, except these objective areas of no tobacco, no sexual things, no I don't know. But I would like to see the language, and it's in your agreement already in here? Is that language
Yes,
already
it's in
here?
all it's in all three development agreements.
Got it.
And
Okay.
then one additional provision that is carried through as part of the local business advertising is all of them do have a limitation that they can't advertise, or they're not obligated to advertise a local business that is a competitor for the underlying property owner. So, an example, in this case, another trailer sales facility can't go on their billboard, or self-storage facility can't go on that billboard, just because it's more of an agreement that they have with the property owner where they're not advertising their competitor that they're receiving rent from. So
I see. So just to be clear, so if we have AutoZone and Pep Boys that want to advertise, you're only going to take one of them, not both?
No. On this particular location, as you know, is a trailer company. And the trailer company and the agreement that we have with the property owner is that we won't put any competitive advertising to the current tenant on
Got
the
it.
property.
Got it.
So if AutoZone wanted to go up, and then Pep Boys and whatever other auto company wanted to be there, auto supply store wanted to be there, they could all go up if they're willing to pay the rate on the board, yes.
Got it. Got it. So no competitor of the trailer company where this sign sits is going to be allowed to advertise on this specific one.
That is correct.
Got it. That makes sense. I'm just a little concerned about what kind of limitations we're going to put. And I don't want to turn anyone away because of a subjective disagreement rather than an objective standard that we set that's equal playing field for everyone.
We're here to be a good neighbor. We want to do long-term business with the city, and we have an agreement with the city, and hopefully we'll have an agreement put together with the city. And yes, we will be a good neighbor and a good citizen to the city.
And I appreciate that. Is this your first business here with the city of Yucaipa? Is Leonard and Company?
Leonard and Company's been doing business on these billboards for 2 decades now. It was originally Mentone, I believe, was the outdoor company, and they were purchased by Leonard and Company for those 2 billboards. This is the first project that we have in the city of Yucaipa beyond owning these billboards, yes.
Got it. All right, well, thank you so much. I don't think I have anything else. That's what happens when you make me sit quietly for so long. Thank you so much, Mr. Goodman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Okay, any else have questions for him? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Haygood is still on hold on the phone. Does anybody have any questions about digital signs or the technology on
I
his
think
signs or anything?
the only line of questions may come up after we hear something from Pamela, maybe. I know she's going to speak on this. And that's more related to you said about ambient lighting and how we can, dusk to dawn kind of thing, help reduce the glare or
Correct.
the brightness. So
Thank you.
have him stand by, please.
So the next applicant would be then Premium Land on behalf of General Outdoor, so they can come up too and talk about their other site.
Okay.
Oh, Craig. Just come say the same as Mr. Goodman and sit down.
See, I just don't want to know that we approved this one or we giving them that site.
I guess how different are you from what Mr. Goodman said?
I just want to make sure.
Well, I want to just clarify a few things and, you know,
Oh, is he back
a
up
few things I'm stewing on a little bit. The developer's agreement that is subjective to all 3 signs, basically is 95% what General Outdoor came in with the first place. The $50,000, which you can say is $1.5 million over 30 years, or all the different things, the content of the signs, all that, it's all the same. It's all something that was put together originally by General Outdoor Advertising. The mimicking of the signs, I'm a little disappointed if staff gave direction to mimic the General Outdoor Advertising signs to all look the same. Shame on staff, because I don't.
Well, he gave you credit. He said we copied you.
Exactly. Well, I mean, if there's 2 signs within 3,000 feet of each other, if public information requests, but if you are putting 2 signs within 3,000 feet of each other, they shouldn't be looking like each other. There should be some kind of a change, in my opinion. So let me get into this sign. Our sign on the other end of town, fortunately, is 3.4 miles away from our original sign. It is, part of the reason for that is so that they're in 2 different locations. They can work in conjunction with each other. By the way, you ask questions about emergency things and Amber Alerts and stuff. They do get notification from the Sheriff's Department, and immediately shut down the billboards for a 2-hour period during an Amber Alert. No advertising, no nothing, nothing but Amber Alert. So just to give you some information on that. But anyway, getting specific to this billboard, because I know all that other stuff is going to come out of the wash at the city council. This sign, I think, is in a great location. It is just past County Line Road as you're coming in from Palm Springs or Beaumont or Banning or wherever. So there's going to be people that are going to see that. They're going to, I mean, obviously you can see it from both directions, but it's the people going westbound that are really going to benefit from that sign and seeing that sign. The other ones from the people that are going eastbound. So there's not much more to say. It's the same billboard that we're putting in the other location. It's the same design. It's the same Yucaipa Mountains. It's the same logo. It's the same, city identification billboard that is being put in for the purpose of advertising the city of Yucaipa, glorifying, and for everybody in town. And there's different ways to skin the cat as far as the businesses go to be in there, but we think that the shorter term is we like the longer term for people to be on the billboard for a longer period of time and get ingrained. If you're on there for a 60-day period, then you've got a little more depth with people that have been driving up and down that freeway for 60 days and see that Chris Markarian Law Group handles personal injury claims and so forth. And of course, you probably want to advertise from one right across from you, even though you had to recuse yourself. But anyway, so that's it. Any questions? I'm more than happy to answer them.
I think my main, and I appreciate, and I want you to feel proud that someone copied the good work that you guys did instead of,
Well, I'm sure
hopefully you
imitation
guys.
is the sincerest form of flattery, but if I opened a Wiener Schnitzel on the boulevard, I wouldn't want the hot dog hut across the place with the same exact design.
And that's a point well taken.
So-
However, these are very nice-looking signs that will represent the city of Yucaipa from both ends. So if anything, we'd like the one off of County Line and the one that Mr. Goodman just presented to look the same, and the one in the middle maybe looking different, but I'm not gonna open that Pandora's box for you to deal with. I think they're all beautiful signs, and I hope they work in conjunction with each other, and I don't wanna see more than, I think that was a very reasonable motion that you guys made when I wasn't here, that we're gonna limit them per off-ramp. And you probably got grandfathered in because ultimately Mr. Goodman's sign or the Leonard and Company sign and you guys' sign are on both ends of Yucaipa Boulevard. So we just need one more on Oak Glen, so you guys get to it. And we'll be done. But thank you, Craig.
You got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben, do we have any comments or public?
So I will recall the individuals. So the first one will be Pamela Smythe.
Good evening once again. My last name is pronounced Smith, and I'm at 31133 Outer Highway 10, City of Redlands. I face that billboard. You have before you my speaking notes, but I made an error at the beginning, so I apologize for that. I'm a 72-year resident of your community, a product of your schools, a 1963 graduate of YHS, a teacher there, and at Crafton Hills College. My property has shared your boundary lines with the City of Redlands since the time of your incorporation. I oppose the billboard at 31103 and 107 as proposed, but modifications suggested by Mr. Goodman and Mr. Ondeck when they came to visit me, who came all the way to my home from Long Beach to see it for themselves, would give everyone a win-win situation. As you can see by these photos, if you go to the next handout with the angles, I gave you a lot to look at. As you can see by these photos and my comment letters, the billboard is angled so that 75% of it is visible into my home and across my entire property. As the aerial photo shows, half of the visibility is wasted on at least 300 feet where it hits the rear yards of the frontage road properties. To be more effective and cost-efficient, this angle can and should be reduced without decreasing the desired visibility to the freeway, as Mr. Goodman explained. The photo shows my house sitting directly under the 300-foot mark. The diagram on the back shows how Mr. Goodman can reduce that rear angle and make adjustment to the point to the front to help mitigate the adverse effects. These adjustments would also help reduce the excessive glare and bright lights that will most certainly continue to broadcast into my home. Sequa asks, does this project have environmental effects, pardon me, I'm tired, environmental effects that will cause substantial adverse effects, either directly or indirectly, to abutting property? The answer is yes. Under legislative principles and policies, CEQA encourages you to consider additional feasible mitigative measures or alternatives to lessen adverse effects in cases such as these. Leonard and Company can do that. They can bring about the best possible solution if you will make the effort to work with them. They made this effort to be a good neighbor. I need you to be a good neighbor and do the same. Please take time to see the billboard up close from my home and property so that you will see the reality behind what you have thus seen only on paper. This is a fair and reasonable request. No one should be forced to live with a billboard intruding into their home. I would not put a billboard at this death trap location. The one nearby will meet your advertising needs, but if you must, then make it better, make it safer for the freeway drivers. Let good sense and conscience be your guide.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Smith, and I want to be the first to apologize for not saying your last name correctly. So, Ms. Smith, thank you so much for coming out.
You're welcome. My
Okay, thank
pleasure.
you for your comments.
Thank you. You're welcome. Sorry for all the homework you have to do.
Thank you so much. So, before we call the next public speaker, can we ask a couple of questions of Mr. Goodman? Or is the quorum, do we move forward with the rest of the public speakers?
I think we move forward with the rest of public speakers. I don't know if they want to speak on
same
these
issue?
individual proposals, and then we can certainly bring up then the applicant for the rebuttal or discussion
Okay.
from the public comment. So the next one would be Rick Hurling.
We bring them up for rebuttal after.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Rick. I'm just real brief. You probably heard what I'd spoke on when you were in the other room? Did you have a chance to? I basically was in approval of this. I was looking not to, we have some property we've just purchased, and I was telling the group of gentlemen here that we, working with Ben, and we're in the process of developing that property right along the corridor. And my brother and I, and we don't want to put another monument in, but we do have a billboard on site, both east and westbound, and we'd like to be able to maybe upgrade that with that possibility in the future. We're going to develop the property probably over the next, we're trying to get it done, at least process planning in the next 6 months, and then hopefully within a year and a half finish. So if we can include that in there, the idea was mainly just, I was saying maybe 3.5 signs, something not so big, but be able to utilize the billboard, because we do have one there on site, and when we do the elevation change, we'll take it out and preferably upgrade it if possible. I see it's up there, it says removal. Once it's removed, it can't be put back in. So the option there was, if you guys would just recognize the fact that as business owners, we'd like to have the opportunity to be able to work with, I think it's Lamar or whoever it is. Anyway, that's all I just wanted to say.
Just for point of clarity, you will work on a billboard that's static or electronic?
Either one. I'd like to do electronic if there's a possibility, but if that's only if you guys would approve that. Again, I don't need to be 50 feet in the air or anything like that. I mean, it's something that similar, maybe smaller in size, but the concept is there. But static, either way. I mean, obviously, the landowners use it because it offsets, the cost. And so, as business owners, that's what we do. We just try to offset our costs. So, anyways, the whole point was to just give us that option. That was all.
That's Madeline's timer that you're.
Oh, no, that's my.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Madeline. All right on time. Yeah, it was a good timer.
All right, and then the last one, since I'm apparently misspelling or mispronouncing the last name, Caesar
Marufo,
There we
Mr.
go.
Marufo, my incubator neighbor.
That's right. That's right. My name is Cesar Marufo. I'm with the Chamber of Commerce here in Yucaipa, representing the Board of Directors. And we, like I said earlier, we are in favor of the projects. How many you decide and where you decide to put them is above our pay grade, so we just want to defer that to you. But we just want to say that I think it's going to be beneficial for local businesses. It'll be beneficial for the chamber as well as the city, and the residents will get to know, maybe keep their dollars here as well. So I think that's important to note. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Is that all then?
That is all. So
Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing. And did we want any rebuttals on any,
Yeah, I'd like a rebuttal from Mr. Goodman just to address Ms. Smith's concerns. Let's start with the angle. How flexible is your angle to make sure, this nice lady's in teaching. You can't get in better career than teaching. And she's worked very hard to have a beautiful home on top of the hill. Can we do anything about your angle without deterring from your business?
The angle of the billboard, if you can see the top right slide there, the angle of the billboard Right now, I believe is at either a 20 or a 30-foot V. There would be an opportunity for us to open up the V a little bit more, which would then change the angle as the back of the billboard opens up wider. So yes, we can work with the angle of the billboard.
Okay, perfect. So with that being said, how much can you open the V with the sign being visible still from both directions?
Thank you. Well,
We're
I know,
trying to strike a balance here,
I've
Mr.
opened that
Smith.
can of worms now. I know. I see it.
All right, so how
so-
far can we stretch this to accommodate her a little bit?
So here's what we can do. It's a little bit more technical than coming up and saying, I'm going to open it up 10 more feet or 20 more feet. So what I'm willing to do, Mike, I think what we need to do is go out and flag the billboard again, the same way that Mr. Matlock had described it to all of you before. We come out, we flag the billboard, and we can determine the angle of the opening in the back of the sign. Every little bit of tweaking a little bit wider is going to help with the angle away from her property. But we also have to remember that we've got the 3-foot-long louvers on the side and the 14 feet up on the top. We also have the technology of watchfire signs that forces the image down towards the freeway. This is very much different than upward lighting. Again, upward lighting that just kind of mirrors right off of the vinyl sign and then goes off into space. Our whole idea with this type of technology is to keep the image focused to the freeway.
And let me ask you
But
this.
we will
do you-
work on that.
Do you have an electronic sign that we can go drive by at night and look at to see what it looks like?
This is the first electronic sign that Leonard and Company will be doing in the marketplace down here. Watchfire Signs is a very large supplier. I believe that we could get Josh on the phone to give us an idea of where his various Watchfire signs are in the area so that you could go out and take a look at them.
Yeah, if we can at least get 2 or 3 locations and we can look at what they look like, you know, during day,
Right.
during the evening,
Right.
what kind of reflection they're going. I know you said they're gonna dim to almost down to 10% at nighttime.
Correct.
When it's dark.
So the power-wise, they dim down to approximately 10% or less. The real test is the 0.3-foot candles above ambient light. Josh can give us various locations. Most likely, if you want him on the phone now, he could talk about that. If you want it in writing, we can deliver it to you in writing. One of the other opportunities that we had talked with Pamela about is one of the digital signs that was mentioned by one of the planning commissioners earlier, which was the digital sign on the corner of the 10 freeway and Tippecanoe. I don't know who makes that digital sign, but one of the things that I've noticed is how dim it is at night. It doesn't light up the whole area when you pass by. It's probably at 0.3-foot candles or less. It's a very good example of how dim a digital gateway sign can be when operated properly.
Okay. What is the current angle on this right now?
I believe that it's at either a 20 or a 30-foot V. I don't have a set of plans in front of me to be able to see, but you know, we will do our best. We will get out there and flag the location and make every little tweak we can to the angle of the back of the board.
All right. I think. Miss Smith, yeah. Yeah, we appreciate it. We'll do everything we can here to balance this interest of your enjoyment of your home and this man's business and opportunity. So with that being said, we'll have to discuss, and I think that's coming up next. So Mr. Goodman, I'm done with any questions. Thank you so much.
The billboard is at a 30-foot V.
30-foot V. All right, thank you so much. You want me to go back? What? All excited in here? I don't have to leave for this, do I?
No, not for these,
Oh, okay.
these
What are
two.
you trying
yeah.
to kick me out of here for? All right.
Okay, so we closed everything. Now we're back to the commissioners.
Yeah, so the next part would be essentially the recommendation on these two specific applications. So it'd be the motions for C and D, and then along with that, we'll be adopting the F, so the findings for the respective conditional use permits. And then again, tying in the MND that was done for the project, so the environmental clearance that it falls within the environmental analysis provided. And so that is up for the commission. Again, kind of with this overall totality of the package, it is a recommendation to city council. So certainly some of the discussion points and perhaps some of the additional tweaks, the applicants can provide that information for city council as well as part of the ultimate final action.
So you're saying this vote would include only C, D, and H and I of the recommendations, or C, D, and I?
So C, D, and then F, G, H, and I.
F, G, H, and I.
Well, I'll just weigh in on this because my opposition was to having two billboard signs at the same off-ramp that are both gateway type signs. I don't think we need two gateway signs.
No.
So that was why I made the motion with the recommendation. We should only allow, if we're gonna have a big, because this is bigger than a regular billboard. If we're gonna have a gateway sign or a billboard this size, they should be spread. And only allow one at each
End of town.
end of town or at each of the three major or off-ramps that we have in town. So, again, like we said, it's probably above our pay grade. It's gonna go to city
So how are we
council.
gonna distinguish who goes where?
Well,
Who's on first? Oh, I don't know. He's on second?
Yeah,
Who's on first?
but that's my problem with it is, I don't have a problem with his project or his billboard. I think they're all, but I personally can't support
No.
two that close in proximity to one off-ramp of the same type of billboard with this, I just think it's overkill for what the city needs.
That's what we talked about, distancing a mile or some kind of a distance between them. So you have three of them, you gotta distance them somehow.
And I kind of share that view. I think especially if they're electronic, this is new to the city of Yucaipa. We've had a big public opinion against electronic billboards for decades in this town. And here we are putting two right next to each other. However, the flip side of that is, this is the two sides of Yucaipa Boulevard. It's not Live Oak Canyon or Oakland or County Line. This is our boulevards, both ends. So I'm not as much against it, even though I think they are close to each other, unfortunately. And I don't think there's a way of him just picking up the whole trailer land there and putting it on Oakland as much as he wishes to.
Yeah, but you got two here and then nothing, and then clear at the other end of town, you have one.
I can only foresee one more at Oakland and one more at probably
Well, we have a new off-ramp,
upcoming on-ramp.
yeah,
Yeah. So,
of this type. And what I was shot down on is the old billboards that are existing. I had a list of, basically, there's 10 billboards on the westbound lanes, 8 of those being two-sided, 9 billboards on the eastbound lanes on that side of the freeway, 8 of those being two-sided and 1 of them single-sided. So, and they're old and most of them are sitting on telephone poles for support.
and that's between County Line and Yucaipa Boulevard?
Yes,
Okay.
or between, between County Line and Yucaipa Boulevard.
Including
That's the number.
the Leonard sign, which is past Yucaipa Boulevard.
Right, that's everything that's in the city limits of Yucaipa.
And we tried to clean that up, but Ben won't let us do it.
Yeah. So,
It's not that we can't clean it up, as we will do that as,
do I
we
need to
won't
set
muddy
the
up.
timer
Let me
on
ask,
it again?
let me ask you a question. On that billboard by the trailer place, wasn't there an issue sometime back with Caltrans not allowing that billboard there or something?
No, he
What?
has approval for it.
Oh, you got that approval through Caltrans? Okay, just curious.
So it is an existing billboard structure, so it's more the conversion of it. I do want to quickly kind of note, so the billboard sizes that are presented today, the 14 by 48, we do have static billboards in the city that are those same dimensions. So it isn't necessarily this is a unusually larger billboard. Some of the one that had been previously approved, that existing billboard structure is smaller than what was ultimately approved on that, but it isn't, the EMCs themselves are not necessarily a larger billboard than what a conventional static billboard is. It's still kind of within that same aspect ratio. I would say based on kind of how the Plan Commission has weighed in on everything is with the direction and recommendation that council kind of consider whether or not they want to restrict it to one at each off-ramp kind of location, is if the applications themselves are okay, then it would be more of city council, I think, weighing on which one is the better site. But if there isn't necessarily an objection to any of the three in of itself, and it's just more weighing in on which one would fit within that, then the city council is gonna be the one that has to make that decision.
Because
no
my
matter what.
problem with the whole thing is, as a committee, we weren't able to hear all three, and in particular, these two presented before we had to vote on the first one.
Well, I mean, that puts me on a spot. I don't want Leonard's sign to be disadvantaged because I'm within the vicinity of the second one either. If I were in his shoes, I'd be mad that someone owns a property that created a conflict that he wasn't here.
You can take that up with him later.
I'm sorry. I know Ms. Smith would be happy for us not to put that sign up there, but I think it's a very steep decision for them going through all these steps and going through all the expenses of wanting to put, again, it's a beautiful sign. It says the city of Yucaipa. It's on both ends of Yucaipa Boulevard. So if we had these two here, but then only one at each off-ramp, I don't think it's too far of a stretch for our city to accommodate that.
So can we just do a recommendation to city with our motion that they be located at different off-ramps?
You can't do that. How are we gonna do that?
We already did.
We did.
No, but we're here to consider this one on this property. So you're gonna tell him move it to a different property?
The city council can. Am I
Can we?
correct, Ben?
I don't,
This has to go back to city council.
So it does, so the totality of everything, no matter what, has to go to city council. So planning commission could certainly decide that, since the motion was carried on the other one, recommend denial of this one based on that policy, and that, because everything gets tied with the legislative stuff, they can still hear this particular application, or you can approve it or recommend approval and punt kind of the site-specific one to what their preference is. All this is, under the assumption that the recommendation from planning commission is what they want to do. Whether or not it is one at each corner, whether or not it's two, or city council can say we don't want any as well. So there's, no matter what, they're gonna have the final bite at the apple, is getting the pulse of the planning commission and what should happen for that. But it is certainly unique. Chris, you probably could have stayed at your soccer game and cleaned everything up.
I could have stayed at the soccer game.
But good questions, nonetheless. But
I wanted to be present. I don't like to miss meetings,
Hang
unlike
out
my
with
other
me.
colleagues here. I took a commitment to serve as a planning commissioner, so
Okay, so we can give you the motion to approve this one, and then it falls in the hands of the city council with our
limit
recommendations.
and restrict. Yeah.
So we need to do these individually, right?
you can do
We don't have
both
to.
together.
I'm ready to make a motion to approve both.
I'd prefer to do them individually, because I've already,
Yeah. I'd rather prefer them to do them individually.
Why?
why?
Yeah?
Because I had to vote on this one
Right.
without you here.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And I don't agree with having two, so I can't support two at that ramp. Even though it's a great project and I don't have a problem with his project, I just don't like two of them. I think it's overkill. I don't think we need it.
I won't approve, I can't weigh in on two at the same location or at the same off-ramp.
So then it sounds like someone will have a motion on
All right.
one of them and start with that and then
Yeah,
do the
I'm
second one.
gonna approve both, so I'll start with a motion on the first one. Unless, commissioners, do you have anything else to add?
Go ahead.
No? All right. So I would like to make a motion that we approve the general outdoor advertising CUP of 21-096 with the recommendations of the staff, letters C, F, G, H, and I.
I'll second.
Okay? We have a motion.
That's the one at Dinosaur Tire
Yes, that's the
Calumet.
one off Calumet Boulevard.
or Outer Highway. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any other discussion from anybody?
So that's the one on the east end of town.
Yeah, county line almost. Yeah.
Right.
Richard? Okay, seeing no, all those in favor?
Aye?
Aye. Any opposed? None.
All
So
right.
that motion carries.
I got another motion if you're interested. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the Leonard and Company CUP number 21-104 with the recommendation letters of D, F, G, H, and I with the modification of the angle to be discussed with city staff to accommodate a resident's enjoyment of her property.
No, because this is the location. You can't change it.
Yeah, you can't change. This is America, this is not England.
I'll second that motion.
All right, first and second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on that. Any other discussion? No more discussion? All those,
Mr. Chair, before.
go ahead.
What is it that goes to the city council? Is it a verbatim transcript, or is it our meeting minutes, or what are they going to hear of this discussion?
So it will be the meeting minutes. It isn't a verbatim set of minutes. It's kind of a condensed version, but the discussion points, the concerns, or at least perhaps the policy elements that the Planning Commission was trying to weigh in on in terms of the approval of these projects will be provided for the city council so that they have the benefit of knowing what was the land use concerns you guys were dealing with in terms of your recommendations, so that way they have the context of that. And then certainly, as with all the Planning Commission meetings in city councils, they are also recorded and posted on the city's YouTube channel. So they can also elect to listen to the entire, I don't want to count how long it's been, meetings for this, and go from there. But we do try to make sure that the record gives a good portrayal of what had been discussed so that they can be informed as well, and the process is transparent for all those parties.
Okay, any other discussion? I see none. All those in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
One opposed.
There you go. And can I just make a comment for the record for the city council to consider in the minutes that the planning commission considered the distance, and we would call it the dissenting opinion here, is that the approximate, the proximity of the two signs is a concern of the planning commission that we hope the city council would somehow cure within their parameter and their authority, and prevent any future close signs to each other.
Yep, that will certainly be included in what the thought process was with the recommendations. But yes, this whole topic will be as part of the staff report and the minutes attached for city council.
Well, everyone's gone now. Thank you for coming in. Mr. Goodman, Ms. Smith, you guys are the only true concerned citizens here.
You got 5, right?
Thank you for your time and good luck, and please take care of that nice neighbor of ours.
We got the housing element.
Thank you.
Okay, Ben, we have housing element left, right?
No, Encore Image?
Huh?
Yes, technically another freeway-oriented sign, but this one is not a billboard. And Maddie will be doing the presentation for this item.
Item number 4.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Chairman and Planning Commissioners. This is item number 4. We just have a few more signs to get through, and I promise we'll be done. So this is a land use compliance review and a major variance for 2 monument signs and a freeway-oriented accessory pylon sign at the Yucaipa Gateway Project, which was approved under case number 18-150. This project includes variances for 2 components, the total number of freestanding signs, and additionally, a 40% increase in the square footage of the freeway-oriented accessory pylon sign area to equal a total of 280 square feet of advertising space. The location of the project is at the existing Yucaipa Gateway Project, again, case number 18150. Primary visibility of this site is located along the I-10 freeway and Oakland Road, and the underlying zoning of the property is service commercial, and there is additionally a floodway to the north of the project site. The site plan is before you on the screen and shows that it features 4 frontages, which includes an existing Argo convenience store and gas station, a La Quinta Hotel, which is currently under construction, and an additional pad, which is designed for the future development of a fast food restaurant. The proposal is for the review of 1 freeway-oriented accessory sign and 2 monument signs on this site, which again includes that existing Arco fuel station and future proposed developments. The blue detail, which you can kind of see on the screen off of Oakland Road, I'm pointing to it with the laser right now, is the existing Arco fuel station sign advertising the pricing details for the gas station. And there's an additional monument sign proposed off of Oakland Road, off of 14th Street, over here. And then the P1 on the north western corner of the site is where the proposed accessory freeway-oriented sign will be located. Development code allows 1 monument sign per frontage, and so with the addition of a monument sign on Oakland Road to advertise future tenant spaces that were described, 1 component of this major variance request is for an additional sign along this frontage. The proposed freeway-oriented sign is 55 feet and 280 square feet is provided in advertising space. There will be a decorative Eldorado stone base and a decorative trim cap as well. Per the development code, as Ben discussed earlier, to permit higher than 25 feet of signage, a flag test must be presented to the Planning Commission demonstrating a requirement for increased height. So on the next page, I'll show you some snippets and pictures of that flag test that was done for this property. So this is a flag test. The picture at the top of the screen is coming from the westbound I-10, and then at the bottom of the screen is the eastbound. The flag test revealed that the 55-foot proposed sign will provide increased visibility from the eastbound freeway given mature trees along the side of the freeway. And additionally, some vantage points, particularly along the westbound exit, has some decreased view shed for future tenants, which will advertise at the bottom of the signage. So the 55-foot detail was determined to be an appropriate height for this sign. This is a photograph of the existing site conditions. So on the left, you can see the eastbound freeway and then some of that mature trees. And then this is the westbound exit, 85. So in terms of the variance for the freeway-oriented sign, the proposed sign exceeds a 200 square foot requirement allowed for freeway-oriented signs in our development code by 40%, and the proposed signage is presented at 280 square feet. This larger signage will help to offset some of the geographical constraints of a bend and a curvature in the road on the eastbound, as well as obstructing vegetation from the west. And the individual sign space per tenant will be approximately 66 square foot, which is in line with the Yucaipa Point project that is currently being developed and includes Chick-fil-A and an existing sign that will have future tenants, give future tenants the opportunity to provide their signage there once their spaces are developed. This is a photograph of the existing Yucaipa Point freeway-oriented sign. So again, the current proposal before you today is consistent with this previous approval. And then the proposed monument signs will include two monument signs that are 6.5 feet high and 36 square feet in area. We'll have a decorative El Dorado stone base and then decorative trim caps, and will be internally lit. Each sign will provide 3 slots for each of the tenants and have been placed with consideration for the clear sight triangle and other safety and engineering standards. So again, as mentioned earlier, the development code allows for 1 monument sign per frontage, but in this case, there are 2 signs proposed along Oak Glen Road, and one of them is required by state statute to advertise price details for the gas station, and was not designed for the multi-tenant use that will eventually be present at this property with the other developments. And because of an extended frontage along Oak Glen Road, the added sign will not congest this frontage. Further, the applicant is pursuing this additional variance. Here are some site photos. And notices of the project were sent to surrounding property owners. One response was received from San Bernardino County Department of Public Works, given that there is a flood control district area to the north, the floodway. And so there has been an additional condition added to the project conditions to prohibit any encroachment without a formal permit from SBCFCD. So it's staff's recommendation that you approve the major variance and the land use compliance review for signs, subject to the conditions of approval, adopt the findings, find the project exempt from CEQA, and direct staff to file a notice of exemption.
Did the applicant here, would you like to come down?
I have a couple of questions for Maddie before we get to the applicant.
Okay.
Can I ask? Maddie, looking at the freeway viewing position eastbound, A, B, C, and D, and then on the other one, E, F, G, and H, is that westbound view or is that still eastbound?
Yes, so there was a typo in the packet. The E through I is actually westbound.
Westbound, okay, so I just wanted to clarify that. And then the Yucaipa Point sign, the Chick-fil-A one, is that 55 foot high as well?
That one is taller. The size or the height of that sign, I think it's about 70 feet, isn't necessarily part of some of the variance findings. It's more the tenant spaces that's within it. So when you look at Yucaipa Point, certainly the anchor and those spaces are larger than what's proposed for the individual tenants here. But some of the more moderate tenants are about the same size. So when you look at the square footage for each individual business is about the same as what you would see on the Yucaipa Point
Got
sign
it.
for what
Okay,
they're
but that
advertising.
one sits a lot higher than 55, right?
Yeah, and they have a
It's-
lot more tenants on that one too.
Okay. That's all I had, thanks.
Okay, sir, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Claude Elena. I'm with Encore Image. We're the sign company doing the signs for our client, Arco AMPM. Our address is 303 West Main Street, Ontario, California.
Thank you.
I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, anyone have any questions for the applicant?
How long have you been making signs?
Encore's been making signs for 77 years. I've been in the business for 28 years.
All right.
See.
I think you've done some good work to be in business for 77 years. All right, appreciate it. I don't have anything else.
Anybody? None?
Nope, no.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any comments?
No public comments on this item.
Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing, move to the commissioners for a motion.
Just to be clear, so this is a major variance with the 40% additional, or is this a minor variance?
Should,
Major.
I'm only asking because I'm learning about this and I got a sign coming up.
yeah, so it's a major variance for the area, and then technically the additional monument sign is a minor variance. But it's yeah, two kind of separate
So
variances.
when we're doing a major variance, isn't there a finding that we have to do and all of that fun stuff?
So any variance application itself requires the findings. More so, the distinction between the minor and the major is a major variance automatically triggers the plan commission review. Because this is a monument sign, it triggers plan commission review anyways, but it just adds the public hearing element to it. But both require the variance findings, so as part of the agenda packet, there is findings made for each respective one. And so the one for the additional sign references kind of the frontages and how that that appearance is and what they're doing with the multi-tenant sign. And then the freeway-oriented one is the one that references the height for the line of visibility, their space to provide the advertising for the different businesses, and then also ties in the reference to the Yucaipa Point sign and the tenant spaces, essentially the square footage that was approved as part of that sign project, and how the individual tenant space area is less than some of the Yucaipa Point ones.
All right. Well, that answers all my questions. I'm ready to make a motion if you want. I'd like to make a motion that we approve case number 22-008, the land use compliance review and major variance for the two monuments of the Yucaipa Gateway project with the staff recommendations A, B, C, and D.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
Good luck, sir. Thank you for hanging out with us this late.
I need 5 minutes for Mother Nature.
What?
Adjourn for 5 minutes.
Adjourn for 5 minutes? What is this?
I gotta take care of Mother Nature.
All right, all right. It's been a long night. I missed half of it, but it's still been a long night. I guess I can go
Got a nap.
visit Mother Nature. We get overtime for this, Ben?
Additional monument.
It's the 30% area.
You guys get overtime for
Or if it's not spelled out in code, then why didn't I not find my mouse?
Here, I know it's annoying. I'll get it up for you.
What?
When are we doing yours?
Oh, I'll advise you.
Okay. For the Central Valley.
Yeah.
for
Mendocino County,
They could care
Humboldt
they could
County.
care less. And they cram down these low-income housing requirements. You won't see this at Newport Beach.
No.
Or Huntington
Or
Beach.
no. Or west, on the west side.
No, nothing. You're not gonna see this at Pacific Palisades.
No, right.
So
Laguna
they
Hills.
look at, they do look at us differently that way, and that is, they got all kinds of room, they don't care. Let's put our report. It's just,
And I'm sure,
I don't know if you had a chance to read through this. but
Yeah.
It's a letter from HCD, and I'm sure it's a form letter. It was just signed by some staff. We disagree with what you got here for these reasons.
yeah,
We're not up to date.
baloney. And,
You gotta hop to it or they'll sue you.
yeah, and they never provide any methodology as to how to implement anything.
How's it going?
I wondered if that was you,
It
Niall.
is me, sir.
Good God.
I'm Niles O'Hara.
Oh, nice.
I work with the Water District.
Oh, yeah, good, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, sir. Yeah, I got married a few years ago.
I understand that.
Yeah, Remington, we're in the Brangland So I'm mostly cool with Edison, but I also do, our company also does.
Last one, she manages the traffic.
That's awesome.
So
How's, how are your folks?
they use a
Doing
ticket
well,
on
doing
file.
well. So my
Then
mother,
they start kind of
she
doing the
remarried,
monitoring,
she's
so they'll see.
Immaculate. Very, very happy to travel a lot. My father, he's doing great.
And then from there, depending what the outcome
They
is,
reached
they'll
out
provide
and blew the
recommendations
dust
for
off
city
of him, let
council.
him keep his beard,
Hey,
brought
do
him
we
back
want
into
to
the ear
implement these
as
things?
an advisor, correct? Yes. And so this time he's in chair of admin, but
So I just need to do it. Yeah, because I hand you up like.
Haven't seen him for a while.
yeah, no, he's
And,
still.
Austin is still Idaho
Oh,
Falls?
so now they're going to Texas. So their original plans, his business plans, all successful, but as far as the biggest problem, I guess houses there are looking at. There's 2 houses on the other side of Yucaipa that have more than double.
Yeah, so something like weird chicane.
And so with his trade and with all the time you get mostly the Idaho, I think they want to go. They're moving to Texas.
If I remember, he was
Locksmith. Yeah, and he's better. I mean, like really good people. That's awesome. He moves. He's smart. He's sharp. He's the Nephi, you know. I'm the Alma the younger, and then the sons of Mosiah. He's the Nephi. One of the areas where
On that, that's
I remember, yeah, it was like triple A calls for a block.
If you had. I mean, there's a process because they have to kind of take it in and then it goes it's either annually or biannually.
Yeah, I'm gonna be putting my name in there, see what we can do.
The improvement.
So Tony, if I needed a pole to put up behind those stands, permanent stands we have, I want to go up high enough to put a cable on the end of it and put a shade cover, but then put another one at the foot of the thing without attaching it to that thing. But then I need a structural engineer. The company said, I need a structural engineer to tell me how much foot-pound pressure, if we hook up a cable to that thing with the shade covers, how much foot-pounds of pressure or something.
What about if you had a pole with a truss type structure going across that then was just adding weight to the leg instead of pulling against it?
Oh, you definitely would, but.
If they're worried about the side pole, if you put a truss, it's just enough to cover it.
The problem is, what they're concerned about is if we attach it to the cover, the pillars, it's gonna put at, unwanted, but how much pressure could that possibly put on it? I mean, those shade covers are gonna be, they're gonna be divided. They're not like one big one. They're gonna be like 6 of them. Okay, so each one will have a cable, so how much stress is or pull?
Well, that's why you gotta, they'll do wind calculations on it.
Well, that's what he has to know. How much wind do we get here?
Are you
And
guys
what's the average and all that
ready
kind of
to?
All right, let's finish this up, man. We got family.
Okay. We do?
Let's go.
Okay, Ben?
All right. So the last one is going to be the housing element recommendation on the adoption of the housing element. And so we'll get moving on that one. I do know that one of our commissioners does have lives within the vicinity of one of the actions taken, so I'll do a presentation on that while he is recused, and then we'll cover the rest.
Which one is that? Is that me again?
That's me.
Oh. Thank God. Someone else gets kicked out.
What's he doing?
It isn't very often we've had this where someone has to recuse, and tonight somehow ended up being the one, so,
2 of us.
yeah.
He has to be recused because he lives in the vicinity of this general plan recommendation.
Go home. We're done.
All right, so I'm gonna cover,
He should have gone home, huh?
Yeah.
You want me to call him and tell him to go home so we don't
Go
waste
home.
his time?
This is our last project.
for No, his item will be very quick, and then he'll be able to come in for the rest of the presentation.
Oh, I see.
So,
Okay, go ahead.
so wanted to talk about this is, again, the housing element. Plan Commission has reviewed this and made a recommendation on the draft housing element for City Council. It was then submitted to the state for review. They provided comments and we have incorporated them. And so now it's more of the formal of actually adopting it. The first item that's part of the housing element, one of the implementation steps is a general plan amendment to rezone one of the sites as part of the housing element. And so this is the property at the corner of Oakland Road and Avenue E, currently designated as institutional. And so as part of the housing element strategies, it had identified that this one would be rezoned as RM24 as part of the Oakland Road strategies that I'll talk about during the actual housing element full discussion. But as part of the implementation and adoption of the housing element, we are doing the rezone effort at the same time so that way it's all done. And then there'll be other implementing steps. But as part of the first kind of motion that staff is looking for is a recommendation on the rezone of this. So it's item number 1. Additionally, as part of the housing element in totality, including the rezone effort, an addendum to the 2016 General Plan EIR was prepared and addressed the programs and level of actions that would be done for the housing element. And so the environmental review has been concluded as part of that. And so staff would recommend, would like a recommendation on the rezone and tying it in with the addendum to the EIR for this particular piece. And then I'll go into the full housing element discussion once that commissioner is brought back in.
Is any of this triggered for the wine deal? I mean, doing any of this?
No, so
Man,
no, so that isn't part of this. Part of how the wine country specific plan is being drafted is to avoid other rezoning efforts. Maybe as part of that, it's keeping the no net loss. This is purely as meeting the different RENA categories. We're slightly deficient on some of the sites, and so this is one that picks up about 150 units. The city does own it, so we're able to kind of be in the driver's seat of the development. We've had success on other affordable housing projects, including the one in the Uptown, as well as the Villas senior housing project. And so as a property owner, we can kind of help dictate what that site design looks like. And so the prior study sessions, both in front of Plan Commission as well as City Council, had identified as this being one of the sites to make up the shortfall that we need. And I'll talk about the other ones with the full balance of the Plan Commission.
So what do we need to do on this?
So this one would be approval of a recommendation of item number 1, and then technically 4, 5, and 4 and 5 for now, and then we'll bring back the rest. But this is just one piece of the overall housing element that we're trying to do concurrent with the adoption, and because of the conflict or the distance requirements for Commissioner Brzee, as he is not able to take that action first. So we have to do this element first and then do the overall strategy that it's a part of in the next motion once he's back.
Okay, so I have a few questions.
Sure.
I think this is my first run at this, or did we approve this before it went back to state and came back during my time?
Yes, so it was in, I think, August of last year. The Plan Commission did weigh in on the draft housing element. I do remember, I would say, some good discussion between you and Commissioner Rettstad as well in terms of some of the housing policy. But yes, this was part of one of the strategies that was included in that. And so as part of this is just memorializing that step. As part of the housing element adoption process, some of the implementing steps have to be done. There's time limits on how quickly that has to be done. Since we have this in front where the zone or the change of land use is a general plan amendment, so cities are limited on how many times they can have that, is it makes sense to get it done now. We're doing the housing element rather than having it fall separately, having to go through the same noticing requirements for this action. It's easier to be one and done with the stuff. And then certainly there'll be some development code amendments on other elements that I'll discuss later on that'll come back, but that one isn't,
Okay.
they're
so
not strict to the same timeline.
I have a few questions, just like one sentence answer for my education. Ordinance number 407 is what the prior zoning was here, and we are trying to change that to ordinance number 343, is that correct?
No, so ordinance number 343 is the land use map for the city. And so.
What's
ordinance number
407?
407 is an amendment to that ordinance that would rezone this particular
Got
site.
it.
So it's saying this ordinance is valid except for this little piece we're gonna tweak
Okay,
based
so,
on this.
so ordinance number 407 is the amendment to ordinance number 343.
That is correct.
Got it, okay. And then the findings, number 4 is contained in agenda report, and that's the agenda report that we have in this? Or
no.
in here?
In that. So
Got
the other element, kind of in the nice binding, is the actual housing element draft. And so we'll do a snapshot of those
And,
elements next.
and then number 5 is just to direct you to file the determination subsequent to certification of the addendum. So that means you would file 407 to 343.
Yeah, so it would be, so items number 2, or number 3 and 5 are the addendum. So the addendum covers the totality of the housing element, including the rezone. So as part of the approval of this element, is you're finding that the environmental review was addressed with the addendum.
Got it.
And then you'll have the same motion for the housing element as a whole, since it covers all the programs that are listed.
And the reason why Commissioner Brzee is not here is because he lives around this area?
That is correct. So
Got
he
it.
is within the noticing of real property. And so
Got
this
it.
particular element of the approval, he can't weigh in on, but the rest of the policy decisions of how we're going to meet the regional housing needs in our housing strategy, he can weigh in on this.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Yeah, okay, I got a question, Ben. Wasn't that project right there, wasn't it have something to do with the Indians? We had to clear it first or something?
So it is adjacent to a certain cultural resource site.
Right.
And so the city actually did, in consultation with San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, who I think just changed their name. We did coordinate. We did do some additional survey work. We had some cadaver dogs on site. We did do some ground penetrating radar and some additional investigation to help map out some of the limits of that. And so we do have those findings. Some of the
Okay.
information is technically confidential, but the way that we've set up the housing element, the 150 units isn't necessarily the full capacity of the size of property and the density. We're assuming that some areas you're not going to want to touch based on unknown variables, as well as the channel along the south perimeter. And so we have designed with doing the additional survey work as part of this effort in coordination with the tribes, is to try to achieve a balance of units that make sense while avoiding areas that could have additional resources. And there's mitigation measures already identified in the general plan EIR that's part of this addendum that would also remain in effect for that site. But we did look into that cultural resource to make sure it wasn't going to be a problem.
Did you say some of the findings were confidential? Just a
Normally,
yes or no. I don't want to get you to lose your security clearance here.
normally travel resource information, some of that stuff is only for people authorized to do that. So it's not necessarily public record
Got it.
for that stuff.
Got it. That's interesting. I didn't know that. So we can still weigh in without needing that information because it wouldn't change our decision, right?
That is right. So it'd be for the developer on that, we're gonna map out, and part of the benefit of the city owning that is we can say, hey, don't touch this. There wasn't any positive findings of significant resources, but certainly as in terms of managing through the creek, we have a little bit more control to say, hey, like, let's keep the development here. We can help kind of do the site design recommendations. And that's been successful with other projects, like, as I mentioned, the Edel Housing Project or the Uptown Project, where because it's our property that we're selling, we can kind of say, hey, this is what we want to see. And so it gives a little bit more control over the outcome.
Got it. So I'm ready to make a motion now, if you'd like. All right. I'd like to make a motion that we recommend case number 22-063 of the amendment to the City of Yucaipa General Plan Housing Element Update with the recommendations 1, 4, and 5 at this time.
3 as well.
1, 3, 4, and 5.
Yep.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Ooh, we got Richard live down there. That's the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None.
Can we go get Commissioner Ruzzi? Can we go get him, Ben?
Aye.
Yep.
So the tribe previously known as San Juan, Band of Mission Indians, okay with it?
We have been working with them to try to address it. And to be cognizant, because, with cultural resources, you don't know until you're actually kind of digging it, but we tried to be good stewards with them. But yeah, they just apparently changed their name. We got an email saying, hey, we changed it. I haven't seen a press release, but.
It's like Prince.
Yeah, we had one in Diamond Bar. They started to dig, and Andy was kind of clear it. They found a lot of artifacts. They shut it down for 2 years while they cleared out that place. 2 years.
All right. So I'll bring everyone back. So tonight's agenda really is to provide kind of the highlight of developing the housing element, summarize the strategies that have been included, and really the focus is the discussion of changes that have occurred following HCD review. So as the Plan Commission knows, in August of 2021, you guys did do a study session and recommended that the draft housing element go to the city council for consideration before we send it off to the state for their required review. And so that process has all since completed. We have received comments from HCD and then worked to address those comments as part of this revision. As part of state law, as you guys know, general plan is a required element for every city. It establishes the long-term plan, and a housing element is one of the key elements for that, and really establishes the housing policy and how the city intends to provide housing at the different income needs of its community. And one of the most kind of fundamental elements of the housing element is the regional housing needs allocation, or RHNA, for a 8-year period. So we are in the 2021 to 2029 regional housing needs kind of number, the housing cycle, and so this housing element covers that and provides the strategies to address those requirements. Additionally, we've done some study sessions with both the Plan Commission and City Council. There's been a lot of laws that have changed over time. This made this housing element update process a lot more complicated in terms of how certain sites will qualify or what the level of analysis is needed to justify some of the different strategies. And certainly there's a lot more punitive measures for cities that do not meet state requirements for housing. Kind of, at least in terms of the current status now, certainly these laws made the housing element update more complicated. But the other fact is the review process to go through the state has been impacted significantly as well. So normally housing element, the protocol is to have the housing element adopted by October of the start of the planning cycle. So it'd be October 2021. I don't think there was a single city that had a certified housing element in that period. Many still do not. Some are doing their first review with the state. And so just a lot level of analysis that's needed to get through that. A lot of the comments that cities have received have been pretty substantial.
And that's October 2021 for the 2022 year?
For the housing cycle technically is 2021 to 2029, starting in October. But really, in terms of how the law and the legal landscape has changed, is it made the process a lot more complicated, and no one hit the deadlines that we would have liked to do because it took a lot more time to prepare the housing element, and then going through the review, the comments. The state has had very lengthy letters for most of the stuff. The comment letter from HCD is included in the packet for the Plan Commission, as well as kind of our response of where we've addressed those stuff. But our comment letter, for example, is 11 pages from HCD on nitpicks that they had on that we've worked to address. But certainly some cities have had, I mean, almost a letter of saying you gotta start over again. And so luckily we did not have that issue. We've certainly, as part of the housing element update, done a lot to provide opportunities for discussion. We've had different surveys done, several city council study sessions on establishing kind of the framework, presentation of other committees and groups, a housing element webpage on our city's website. We were at the 2021 Music and Arts Festival also saying, hey, let's talk about housing. And then certainly, as I mentioned, a study session of the draft housing element to Plan Commission and City Council. So now that we've received the comments from the state, and that's where we are at. And then, as I mentioned, the RENA is really kind of the bulk of the housing element. Everything that is in the housing element is ultimately to help meet this requirement, which is the 2866 units over the next 8-year planning cycle. And so cities aren't necessarily required to build this many units, but we have to provide the means and opportunity for development to this. So the city isn't going to be out there with a shovel tomorrow building, you know, the home, but it's making sure that the process in which we approve projects is conducive to meeting that stuff. And one thing to stress is the housing element spends a lot more focus on the lower income categories because the cost of building and acquiring the land for those makes being able to sell those type of units a little bit more complicated, and so there's more effort that's involved. However, the state has reiterated, and rightfully so, that housing is needed for all income levels. You know, the providing supply that can meet the demand in the market is ultimately what's important. So as much as the very low income category is important, we want to make sure that we're not stifling above moderate income levels either. We want to make sure that we're comprehensive for those different stuff. And so, as I mentioned, several different strategies were developed specifically for
Ben, before you leave that, if you go back to the last slide, the very low and low income levels can be met with senior housing?
To some degree, yes. It depends on what their rents are. I'll kind of talk about some of the strategy of how the densities are, but in the high level context, our RM24 or 24 unit per acre density is the one that's targeted towards the low and very low. Our multifamily district, so the RM district where it's 8.7 units, is the moderate, and then above moderate is kind of any traditional single family subdivision or some of the larger condo type projects.
But a lot of the projects we're seeing coming through are all the senior density bonus. Like, I mean, that's got to count for something.
So they do. As a base rate, they're at least in the moderate income, and then as we get information on perhaps renting and leasing, then they may fall within the low category. So we do try to get that information. When we do the annual reports, the state does ask what units were built, what categories, and they segment it out on a covenant requirement or just anticipated rent. So if, let's say they have a density bonus where they say, we are going to build half the project at a low income rate, then that's a covenant low income project or units. If it isn't, where we just, through the surveys of this is what the rents are going to be, this is the market being catered, then it's a non-deed restricted type of affordability. And so the state does look at that, because certainly not every project is going to be mandated to stay at a certain income level, but based on the market topography will be there. And so all that information is important, and we do try to provide as much of accurate information as we can so that way we're not undercutting our reporting or overcounting it. We want to make sure that we're tracking.
But low income, senior only qualifies.
That is right. And so as part of it, as I mentioned, kind of the more affordable stuff, we really have developed 7 different strategies. One is part of the approach is tying in existing programs that we already have and streamlining it so it gets better credit. So for example, the mobile home park overlay, the Uptown District, already allow for higher density residential development. And so the policy program for this is to make it by right, so it removes that additional step and so allows us to account that for this housing element. The freeway corridor remaining some of those sites as viable sites, they had been rezoned as part of prior housing elements. And based on some of the infrastructure availability for some of the sites, those that can be developed in the 8-year horizon have been included. There's some areas that are a little bit further later phases of the specific plan, and so those were not included. Oakland Road, which as discussed earlier, includes an existing RM24 site plus the site that the Plan Commission just recommended to rezone as well. And then the last two is really tying in accessory dwelling units as more affordable housing, since the rents for those have fallen within that realm. And then the final one is a corridor development opportunity reserve. So it's a variable number that if we, let's say, have one project and say the Uptown district doesn't quite meet the projected outcome that we were hoping for in terms of projects, the commercial corridor can get amended to float that number. So we never drop below the affordable sites that we need. It really is to maintain that. As part of the draft housing element, HC did review these strategies and pretty much accepted what we were trying to do. They liked the different programs that we had. However, there was a lot of kind of minor tweaks or additional information or analysis that was added in to help kind of reinforce what the strategies were. So the strategies still remain, but there's some additional elements that we've added in red line text to communicate what is needed based on those comments. And then the last element is the overall housing strategy retains no more than a 15% buffer, and this was per council direction. So we're not over zoning sites for the sake of doing it. We're trying to meet the RHNA targets, provide feasible strategies that can do it, but we're not trying to oversell ourselves on these different projects. We're trying to be pragmatic on that approach.
On accessory dwellings, the city can't mandate rent amounts, can they?
We don't have any requirements for the renting of ADUs. We have done, for ones that have been built, surveys to those owners and said, hey, what are you renting these units out? And so based on those findings, based on the size of the ADU, we have a good sense of what size falls within kind of the moderate income and those that fall within the low. And so in the housing projections that we have for it, we've split the ADU counts on assumption of so many built per year. You're going to see some that are, up to the 1,200 square feet, so the moderate income, and then some that are smaller, and so those would be the lower income. And so we've provided a general split between it. And so as I noted, different proposed tweaks to these strategies. One is the Uptown District. Part of it is there's a lot of smaller lots, but under common ownership, and so the state wanted to have kind of a small lot analysis and a consolidation program so that it's feasible for someone to take, 3 or 4 parcels that are, each maybe, an eighth of an acre, but actually create a viable project. And so that was added in. Accessory dwelling units, that was another program that we've added some additional elements to. As I kind of noted, we have a split, and what the state is looking for, especially with ADUs and how cities have treated it, is they really came back and said, hey, if you're gonna be assuming positive, the best year of ADUs every year, if that's how your housing element's gonna be, set up, is if you fall short of that, you're gonna have to make up new sites. And so we did kind of rescale down to provide a little bit more conservative numbers, because obviously, as everyone knows, the market isn't always going up. In terms of housing, you may have one year where people are doing a lot of ADUs. Something may happen in terms of the market, and so people avoid doing that expense for 1 year. And so we didn't want to put ourselves in a spot of constantly chasing our tail. However, we have had a lot of positive ADU growth. As part of it, though, is certainly programs to encourage ADUs is that the city is looking at getting, shelf-ready plans where you come in, here's a ADU program. If you're ready to do it, you can go build it, you pull the permit, all the work and some of the design expenses already done for the applicants to make it easier. Another element that the Plan Commission and City Council can consider is ways to incentivize certain ADUs. So as you guys have known, you have received a few different special use permit and ADU applications where, someone wants to build a garage attached to an ADU, so you end up with this kind of larger structure. And so we may, a consideration is, hey, we'll allow, if you build an ADU, you can add a, 2-car or 1-car garage with it, and you won't trigger any additional review stuff because we'd rather see this element added onto it. And so we can certainly play around with that. And so we do set the stage for those type of discussions of ways to make the process easier and certainly facilitate if we're going to see this and rely on the strategy in a way that we can encourage outcomes that we want to see. And then the last one that's probably kind of important. So as I mentioned, our kind of higher, lower income categories is accomplished through the city's 24 unit per acre zoning. However, the state's baseline requirements is a 30 dwelling unit per acre requirement. So essentially, they're saying, hey, in order to count for this, it needs to be 30 unless you provide additional information. And so our housing element did provide a lot more information about past projects that have been affordable and that they were within either the 24 units per acre or in some cases, the Horizon Senior Housing Project as an example that had low income units on that, which was at 16 units per acre. So we've demonstrated for the state's review that we've done affordable housing projects at densities that don't have to be as significant as 30 dwelling units per acre to help maintain our existing zoning capacity and really trying to sell that we've been successful. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. If we've done it before, we have a proven track record more so than other communities of facilitating different housing projects. So let's maintain that success rather than being a little bit too heavy-handed on it. And then just some additional notes for the Plan Commission's kind of consideration of how all these elements fit. Certainly the freeway corridor is, a key future development capacity. It was referenced, tonight as part of other items and the potential there. The city has continuously been working to improve infrastructure elements. There will be some roadway improvements proposed near some of the sites already identified, but certainly we're in the environmental review stage for the future freeway interchange that will unlock other housing opportunities and subsequent RENA cycles. So we're definitely trying to move in the right direction to support this. Funding is also an important part, especially with some of the lower income housing or some of the rehabilitation is, you need the money to do it. It isn't always necessarily a straight business case. There isn't the profit margin. And so we are looking at EIFDs, which is an enhanced infrastructure financing district that can help provide some funds to start the projects. There's a program called PLHA that I did want to just kind of note as well. It's the Permanent Local Housing Allocation Fund that's collected by the county right now. And so we have been working with them to try to unlock our share of it. They've been pretty secretive, I guess. I don't know if it hasn't been available or made very common, and it may be a strategy that we can tie in a little bit more to get some local funding or grant opportunities. And then another program that we do have in place and helpful, especially on the rehabilitation side, is our facade improvement program, where we provide a low-cost interest loan so someone can do the cosmetic improvements to their house. We certainly do have some older housing stock in here that needs TLC. Every house and structure needs ongoing maintenance as part of it, and so it's a way to help bridge that gap for some of more vulnerable residents. And then additionally, as I noted before, the above and moderate income housing is also important. So the work that's being done for the Freeway Corridor specific plan, the work that's being done for the Wine Country specific plan, and some of the other development projects you guys are reviewing are all part of the overall thing of providing housing to meet the demand and not cornering just one category. It's being comprehensive in the strategy. And then as part of the format, it hasn't changed from the general plan. It's goals, policy, and programs with the housing element covering housing, neighborhood quality, housing sites, housing design, housing assistance, and fair housing. As part of the state review, I do, as I mentioned, have the state letter included as well as a table that shows their comments and how we addressed it. The draft housing element is included in track changes to show all the spots where we've added language based on their comments. Really, they wanted additional provisions that help clarify the approach and some additional programs that help augment what we were proposing, but really helping tie the pieces together so that they could understand what our line of reasoning was for this. Some additional elements that also went into there was some of the background projects, as I mentioned, the affordable projects and the densities we've had. we add a lot more background information so that they had the benefit of knowing what we know in terms of our community and the successes. And then finally, one thing that has certainly, I think, complicated every city is the fair housing discussions. The HCD guidelines on how to implement the fair housing law requirements came out pretty late in the game. So pretty much every city banked on they were going to have to really dive into that once they've had it, but couldn't lose the boat. And so we've had a lot more detail. Yucaipa is unique in that we really don't have some of the fair housing issues that other communities have. We don't have the other side of the tracks kind of thing. It's much more of, we have areas that have, less investment based on historic issues. Dunlap Acres as an example that was in the floodplain and couldn't really have development, so that has a little bit lower income. City's done a lot of drainage infrastructure projects that has removed that impediment, and so that issue is being addressed through our collective capital improvement projects to address for housing. But we don't necessarily have, one income group or one ethnic group being, a lower income area. It's pretty well split around really just areas that have less investment due to prior decisions at the county level before incorporation that we have been since working on that really addresses that. And then again, the housing element really isn't intended to reinvent the wheel. A lot of effort was done by the Plan Commission, the GPAC, City Council as part of the 2016 General Plan. And so really what we have done, and the comments continue based on what the state looked at, is really just an evolution of that, reinforcing different elements to make them a little bit stronger or a little bit more feasible, and really making the tweaks needed to comply with state law. But it isn't a wholesale. We didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It really is just impact, addressing those changes. And then, as I noted earlier, an addendum to the 2016 General Plan EIR has been prepared. It did identify that no new impacts from that previously reviewed EIR is included. It's a lot of the programs, as I mentioned, is an evolution of what's already kind of in play. And so it doesn't necessarily trigger new environmental impacts, but it does address the housing element in its totality. And so I do want to kind of note the next steps. Plan Commission recommendation to City Council, and they will be the ones that ultimately adopt it. As part of that effort, we do have to resubmit the document to HCD for their review and ultimate certification. We have included in the motion as item number 6, it does authorize the city manager and the planning manager, myself, to make any kind of minor revisions that HCD has. So as we send it out, if it's nothing major, if it's kind of just minor little additions, we don't have to go back through the whole review process. It's like, hey, let's just get it done. If there's anything significant, then that will certainly come back through. But based on the record, the comments that we received from HCD, as well as our responses, we believe we've addressed all their comments. There shouldn't be anything outstanding. And so with that, we will be proceeding. However, we will be sending the draft probably tomorrow to HCD. As part of the review, there's a state law, AB 215, that establishes some of the public review periods. And so we have now met that requirement, so we're going to send it over for an expedited review, so that our goal is to get any comments that they have before we formally adopt it. So once City Council sees it, we're accepting track changes and we're done. And the implementation step has already been covered. And so with that, that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions. But the draft housing element has been provided to all of you guys. It does show the track changes that were made, and these changes were done to address the state's comments on the housing element. And we have met their comments.
Where do you store all this information, Ben?
Yes.
Great job.
Yeah, yeah.
So on the wine, now,
You're here.
they're talking about above Fremont, like in Carter, rezoning that to 10,000 square foot lots for wining, for opening up, I don't know.
Yeah, so the wine country specific plan, as you guys know, is currently zoned all residential. So there's a
Tony doesn't
residential
talk to
zoning
us.
capacity that's already established. So the state laws, if we got rid of it there, we'd have to find another spot to put it. And so that's the specific plan to free up land for ad land purposes consolidates the lot. So there's no increase in the number of housing units that we allowed, but allows smaller lots to be done with wineries traded with the delta of that. So it's up to, in certain areas, the 10,000 square foot or greater or half acre lots, so that at least more than half the land can now be agriculture and purposes as well. And so that's,
For you to understand that, if you didn't, is if we had 1,000 acres where we were gonna have 1,000
I know,
homes,
I got it.
now we're gonna put 1,000 homes on 500 acres so we can have 500 acres.
So
of
we just
agriculture.
go back up in Oak Glen, annex some of that property.
that could be it too. Certainly with the annexation, it is whatever the general plan capacity is at the time that state law came into effect. So if, let's say, the county allowed so many units, if we change that, then we would get stuck with those numbers. And so that wine country specific plan isn't trying to relocate the housing units, and as part of the strategy is saying, these were all above moderate housing units, we're gonna keep them as above moderate housing units. So no, there's no, in terms of the housing strategy, there's no changes, at least from a policy level. It's just the implementation is different to achieve other community objectives. But that will come separately, but it is a element that ties into, the overall housing strategy. We can't forsake one category in the pursuit of another. Everything is in its totality of how to respond to it.
I'd like to make a note, and then I'm ready for a motion.
So there does have to be the public hearing. I see a packed crowd for tonight's discussion,
yeah.
but yeah.
What does the chairman say?
You still meeting?
Need to open
So
the
I
public
just want to make a comment that our agenda on item number 5 has the recommendations of A through F, and the agenda report has recommendations 1 through 6. And I believe my motion was for 1, 3, 4, and 5 previously, so I will stay within that criteria and make a motion for recommendations number 2 and 6. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that was a format change. The city council packets are arranged in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and plan commission is A, B, C, D, and E. So that's something that was caught on here, but not consistently. The motion, if the plan commission does recommend approval of the housing element, essentially the action would be items 2 through 6, because the CEQA element still can play for the housing
Got it.
element as a
All right.
whole as well.
So that's where I will make a motion that we make the recommendation on case number 22-063 for the City of Yucaipa General Plan Housing Element Update with the recommendations of 2 through 6.
First, the public hearing portion needs to be opened and closed. Or
You want to
closed.
open and close public hearing so we can make a motion?
Yeah, if you want me to.
Okay.
Okay,
We have no speaker slips on
there
either.
is no public comments, so we'll close the public hearing, move to the commissioners, and we need a motion.
All right, so I will go back and make a motion on case number 22-063 of the City of Yucaipa General Plan Housing Element Update with recommendations 2 through 6.
I'll second
Okay,
that.
we have a second. Richard, thank you. With all that said, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
We can go for 10 more minutes to make it a 4-hour meeting.
So, okay, our next meeting, Ben, what do we have?
It will be June 1st. There will be another, a few different items on it, and
On June 1st?
yep. So in 2 weeks, we'll be back here.
All right, we look forward to June 1st.
Yep. And I don't have any other stuff, so I won't try to keep us for 4 straight hours. But thank you guys all for tonight. It's certainly some more complicated projects, and
Wow.
they can't all be cakewalks for everyone. So we gotta have something challenging for everyone. So.
Yeah, and make the next.
With that,
planning
meeting
commission
adjourned.
half an hour meeting.
So what are you doing with that?